September 2016. As we speak now, Chair, 6 of the 9 have been addressed and only 3 are remaining. And the 3 that are remaining are listed in slide 11 of the presentation that we have distributed. Just to finalize our input, Chair, the process that started at the same time as the PwC report, which was the Treasury investigation of the same issue, is still not completed. We do not have a final report from the Treasury about what they found. In fact, in the process of their doing the investigation, we gave the National Treasury the PwC report that had been commissioned by us for us to correct ourselves, to correct the mistakes that had been done in contracting. And it is the report that the National Treasury gave to Scopa, the report that we had commissioned. And that is our input, Chair. We are still awaiting Treasury's final report. In this presentation, we address, however, the issues that the Treasury raises in their draft report, which we do not agree with a lot of their findings because they just display a misunderstanding of the process. Thank you, Chair.
So we should then call off the meeting.
No, I'm just saying then we can open to questions because we thought that explaining that context was important.
Okay. No, that's fine. Comrade Kekane?
No, because you are correct. This confuses the whole thing now. But my question would be, National Treasury, that is in our engagement, that is with them, they indicated to us that you are not cooperative. You are not providing them, that is with the information that they need to finalize their report. Now, I just want to check. You said in the PwC, that is report, there were 48 recommendations, and out of the 48, 39, that is were not dealt with. And you said the remaining, that is bunch of recommendations, they are more or less 6 or 3, that is in your presentation. Now I just want to establish as to which areas you did not, that is, cooperate with National Treasury, because that's the question that we asked National Treasury. We wanted National Treasury to provide us with a report. They said they are unable to do that because you are not cooperating. We are holding that is information.
Yeah.
If I may answer.
Wait, no. Before you see, Comrade Kekane, that was the reason I was reluctant to give him the time to speak. Because I said we're here to talk about PwC report. Now, the National Treasury report that we may then find ourselves going into, it's something else. So I would maybe take the last part of your question, because from what he's saying, the PwC report had 48 recommendations. And up to now, only 3 have not been addressed. And you are asking, which are these 3? I think that is the correct one. But on the National Treasury things, I would really not want you to venture into, because then we'll be going into something that from our side, we may not be very informed, and then we'll get into speculation, and it will be you versus National Treasury, and that is not what we want.
Chair, I agree with you 100%. But you see, there is an element of concern, because if that PwC report, the preliminary one, and what the National Treasury provided us, then, even last week, has been commissioned by Eskom, Kekana's point of view is correct. Let's be given clarity. Where was the areas of difference between them and National Treasury? Because even in the last presentation, we cautioned and we did indicate to National Treasury that give us what are the areas of difference that made you to be able to be in this way. Now we are being told today that that report that National Treasury presented to us originates from the concerns that were being expressed by Eskom itself. It does present a little bit of a problem, because you are correct, we should not go in a to and fro between ourselves and National Treasury. But we would have also expected in the file that you gave us that National Treasury would have been telling us what is it that they are talking about. But we read the file, going through to the last. It's the same information of PwC. They never brought us into new areas of thinking. I don't want you to do it up and down. I'm just saying that there's a matter of principle in related to this particular matter.
No,
Yes, sir.
no, correct. National Treasury briefed us on the PwC report. They didn't give us their own, or we did not discuss their preliminary report. That's why I'm saying I'm a bit hesitant for us to move in that direction, lest we shift focus from the PwC report. Lengwa?
You see, my sense of intuition never fails me. It was precisely for this reason that I asked that Honorable Kekane be allowed to continue with the question and answer session, not to receive a briefing. Because I do not think we are here to be thrown into the fray between Eskom and National Treasury. So, Chair,
No point of order, Chairperson. No.
Allow him to finish.
No, but he also must manage his wordings, Chairperson. We are raising a matter of principle. We're not involving intuition. We're not doctors. We're saying to him, there's a matter of principle that this is what has happened. Unless somebody pushes us into a total different direction. We're taking what they're saying, but if he's going to be working on intuition and suspicion, he's then casting suspicion on other members. Can you stop there, Chairperson, and argue his point as a point?
No, that's fine. Actually, he's agreeing with you. If you take away, no. Take away intuition. The point he's raising is that we actually should not have had that part because then it takes us away from what we're here for.
No, Chair. Ceteris paribus, my point is this. National Treasury did not give us their own report. I even said this at the last time, that they teased out the matters which they thought were important and for the benefit of the committee. Hence, I say we must not be drawn into the fray between Eskom and National Treasury. It was precisely for that reason, Chairperson, and I still maintain my intuition does not fail
All
me,
right.
that I believe, Chair, let's conduct the meeting as a hearing. Let's
right.
not be confused.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Ross?
Chairperson, just to make the remark that when Mr. Malefe indicated he wanted to make a 3-minute presentation, I thought it was about the coal pricing. And then we were drawn into the reports and the sequence of reports, which I thought was unnecessary. And I believe that is due process that would be followed in terms of the questions from Mr. Kekana.
Right.
So my proposal is that Mr. Kekana structure it and we engage thoroughly with regards to the steps taken and whether there was non-compliance with prescripts of Eskom itself and also with the supply chain management regulations.
Great. Can you maybe respond to the last part of his question, the 3, because out of the 48 in the first year you addressed 39, then you addressed 6, you are left with 3. Which are these 3? Can we talk to these remaining 3 and then we'll continue with these questions?
Chair, we'll talk to the 3. They are in fact on slide 11 of the presentation, and I'm going to ask the CFO to talk to them. But before I'm unceremoniously...
No, let's do this,
The
please.
allegation that we did not cooperate with Treasury
is
not true.
No. Let's do this, CEO. Let's allow the CFO to respond to the question so that we can move forward. Mr. CFO, which are the 3 remaining areas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The one recommendation was that we needed to change the technical standards associated with the labs that we had engaged to conduct the coal sampling for Eskom. Unfortunately, we are not able to implement that recommendation until the current lab contracts expire, which expires on the 31st of March 2017. As soon as those RFPs are going to be issued for the new service providers, we will attend to that recommendation and obviously include the new technical standards.
31st of March
2017, yes.
But this is the 30th of May 2017.
Yes, the RFPs have been issued, Mr. Chair, in terms of the new technical standards. It's just that for us to be able to say it's closed, When we actually appoint them under the new standards, we will then say it's closed.
Okay.
The other one, Mr. Chair, was the issue of internal training needed to be mandatory for certain staff. That training is currently ongoing, and so that will be complete by 30th of September of this year, in terms of all of the mandatory training that all of the employees would need to go under. And then, Mr. Chair, the last recommendation relates to also the RFP process that's currently being undertaken.
It relates to?
The RFP process that is currently being undertaken as well. So those are the three.
What is RFP?
Our request for proposal. So it is linked to my first response, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay. All right, Comrade Kekane. Can we, Ross, just note when it's done, you can then follow up on any of the responses. Comrade Kekane.
No, thanks, Chair. Maybe let me look at, that is the issues that you have raised. Let's start with the total issue that is findings from the report itself. There is an allegation from the same report, from the PwC report, that you as Eskom did not follow, that is your supply chain management. That is particularly on the Tegeta, that is coal mine, or in the big, what do you call that, Brickfontein, that is coal mine. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, in terms of the PwC report that has been highlighted, they have highlighted certain contract management issues associated with the award of the contract to Tegeta, which we have addressed, as we've said. And also, Mr. Chair, something to note is that given the fact that we have had the PwC report that has been issued, as well as the draft findings from National Treasury, we have looked at understanding from a legal perspective, have we complied with the requirements of the PFMA as it relates to supply chain requirements, as well as Treasury's supply chain management framework. And legal opinion at this stage would indicate that we are comfortably compliant with both the supply chain framework from National Treasury, as well as our PFMA requirements in terms of fair, equitable, cost-effective, and transparent.
I'm not referring to that is the PFMA or the supply chain management. I'm saying, as Eskom, you have your own internal, that is supply chain management. I'm referring to your own internal supply chain management. Did you comply with it?
Mr. Chair, again, I think in terms of the 1030, the internal document that the member is referring to is the 1034 document. Yes, Mr. Chair, first and foremost, we do need to comply with the 1034 document. And the non-compliances that have been identified by both National Treasury as well as the PwC report would emanate from the 1034 document as well.
Now, saying you complied with it, on the same report, 1034, was there a formal declaration of interest that is from your members? Because if you talk about compliance, obviously it must be compliance on everything. It shouldn't be compliance on selected issues.
Okay.
Because in the same report, it clearly indicates that that was not complied with.
All right, Comrade Rand, welcome.
This particular element in terms of declaration of interest relates to at the point of negotiation. So at the beginning of all the audits, etc., this wasn't necessarily a requirement, but however, one of the implementation mechanisms that we put in place is to ensure that there is formal declaration of interests that are conducted prior to engagements.
Okay, Chair, I'm not happy with the answer, but I would accept what Eskom is saying. Now, the other issue is, if we are saying there was, that is a declaration of interest, and National Treasury is saying there was not, and obviously you have an evaluation team. That is my line of question, because it is very clear in that report that your evaluation team did not, that is to that. But on the other issue is, the same report indicates that there was no evidence that is provided on the ethics and cardinal, that is rule of, that is safety. Particularly on the issue of the conflict of interest.
Chair, we agree with the observations that were made, and as Ms. Ndeta is saying, those issues relate to the point where the contract was being negotiated between 2013 and 2015, March 2015, when the contract was signed. And she has said that at the time it was not a requirement. So what the PwC report did is that it pointed out these things that you are now talking about, and we have since fixed them. So it is no longer the case that the declaration of interest are not done and that all the issues that you're referring to are not adhered to. So we agree with we agreed in 2015 with the PwC report and their recommendations, and we have since made sure that these things do not get repeated again in Eskom. And these are the things that happened between 2013 and 2015 during the negotiation phase of the contract. Thank you.
Okay. Now, are you saying, because in terms of the report, you commissioned the first report, and there was an outcome that is from Eskom. I think the first one was in 2015. Yes. And the second one was in 2016. Yes. And you are saying those are the areas that is the, in the initial report, those were the areas that were highlighted by Eskom. And you managed to PwC, that is report. And you addressed those issues. All of them, except the three that you have just mentioned.
So, as I said earlier, Chair, there were 48 issues, and we addressed all of them. And by the time we asked PwC to come back and check if all these matters have been addressed, there were 9 remaining. And since then, 6 have been addressed, and there are only 3 that are remaining. So we acknowledge all of the things that are in the first PwC report, that there were problems that were identified as a result of management action of engaging PwC to help us identify these shortcomings. And these shortcomings have been addressed. But all of these things happened between 2013 and 2015 when the contract was signed.
On the issue of Tegeta, in the report it indicates that Tegeta was not referred to the supply development and localization for pre-qualification and supply registration. Is that correct?
That is correct. In terms of supply development and localization, and specifically on the point of pre-qualification, from the department within Eskom of Supply Development and Localization, a decision was taken that we should do a full technical evaluation of all the suppliers. Once we are in the position to award a contract, that is when we will then advise the Supply Development and Localization section to then look at placing the supplier on the database.
Was this applicable only to Tegeta or the rest of your suppliers?
It is applicable to all our suppliers within the core space. We are requested to do the full technical evaluation before putting them forward for onto the supplier database.
Was that communicated to other suppliers? That's my question, actually.
That requirement is communicated within Eskom internally, as the technical evaluation is conducted internally. And the requirement to place them on the supplier database is sent from within Eskom to our Supply Development and Localization Department.
Okay, Chair. In actual fact, Chair, I still want to get clarity on the issue of the cooperation. Earlier on, you ruled me out of order on that, because I feel it is an important area that forms my questions. Because Eskom clearly indicated, National Treasury clearly indicated to us that you are not cooperating with them. And the chairperson that is in the last meeting was instructed by this committee to write a letter, not only to you, because we identified, I think, five SOEs that were not cooperating, that is with National Treasury. Because as a committee, we need to finalize that is a resolution to the House. But unfortunately, if we are not going to get cooperation from any state-owned enterprise, we are going to have a problem that is in finalizing our recommendations that is to the House. I still feel that you need to give us clarity that is on that issue, because it is a burning issue that is on our side.
If I may, Chair, since the beginning of
Well,
the...
I ruled it out, but I wanted to check with Comrade Kekan. If that question is your parting shot, I will bend backwards over and allow it to be responded to. Was that your parting shot? Yes. Do you still have other follow-up questions?
I still have.
I would say maybe deal with your follow-up questions and then remind me when you are done.
But Chair, for the record, we would like to say that we insist on answering that question, because it is a
if it is
a very serious allegation.
No, if it is allowed, then
Order, Chairperson.
Then you will answer it. But if it's not allowed,
Order, Chair. Order, Chair. Order, Chairperson, please. Chairperson, please help us get this process smoothly. We cannot have a situation where a state-owned entity jumps into answering when it's not required to. They only answer when you guide them to answer. Please protect us.
no, that's fine. Yes, complete.
No. CEO, please, man, make our work easier. Respect our chairperson. It's not your authority here. You're accounting. This is the man that conducts this meeting. He gives you the right to speak, and he gives you the right not to answer. Please,
All right. Okay.
make our work easier.
No, that's fine. That's why. Note.
Chair, with all due respect, this meeting and this hearing, and in terms of the law, it's the board that accounts here. So in actual fact, we should be receiving responses from the chairperson of the board, Dr. Ngubane. Any other member of the delegation is at, quote unquote, at the mercy of the chair of the board to answer questions. So I request that we actually respect that parliamentary protocol.
All right. No, that's fine. That's why I was saying, Comrade Kekan, if you could deal with your other questions, the question that you would want responded to, I'll allow you. But I'm saying if it is the last, because if it can come up and then other things crop up, then we lose track of the issues that we're supposed to talk to. Yeah.
No, thanks, Chair. I respect your ruling.
All right.
The other issue is, during the technical evaluation process, it was found that consistent and multiple pen tests were performed. 3 in particular. The last 2 tests were dated after the contract was signed. What was the reason?
As part of our technical evaluation, we conduct combustion tests on the coal. We look in terms of the suitability of the coal, whether it is a blended product or not a blended product. And then it is our prerogative in terms of the number of tests that we select to do. And also depending on the results that come out of those tests will determine how many tests that we do. Including once we've awarded the contract, we are also at liberty to then do additional combustion tests if we want to check in terms of suitability of the coal or any other elements.
Are you by implication saying it is normal procedure to sign, that is after the, to test after the signing of the contract?
The combustion test was conducted before the signing of the contract. There were also other combustion tests that were conducted afterwards for different reasons. But prior to signing of a contract, Eskom conducts a combustion test, of which we did.
But maybe we don't understand. I'm not talking about other contracts. And I clearly indicated that I'm talking about Tegeta in this case. And I want you to focus on Tegeta. Your responses should be on Tegeta. Because if you are referring to other contracts, unfortunately, that's not my line of question. Can we please be focused and talk about what I'm referring to, not something else?
We conducted a combustion test prior to signing of the contract for Tegeta. We also conducted combustion tests post the contract for Tegeta.
The other issue that I need clarity on is there appears to be a discrepancy in the date that is of the environmental and legal report. The first page of the report shows the effective date as April 2014, while the second and the third pages show the effective date as March. Can you clarify that issue?
The environmental due diligence commenced from approximately April, March of 2014. What happens is that they conduct various tests in terms of as the signature is the date when they would have then finalized all their reports. But their interactions commenced before that.
Back to the same question. Is that normal procedure?
It is excuse me. It is normal procedure in terms of the environmental due diligence that it takes a significant amount of time, and then at the end, the date that they put is when they've signed and finished their due diligence. So yes.
There were two meetings, particularly for the pre-qualification between yourselves and National Treasury. In that meeting, I'm looking at you, I can see that you seem not to understand what I'm referring to. No, but that's beside the point. Let me just rephrase my question to say, in the engagement that is with National Treasury, particularly on the same issue, did you indicate to them that it is normal procedure?
Can I request clarity as to whether you're talking about the draft National Treasury report or you're talking about the PwC report?
I'm talking about the I'm talking about the PwC report, because my understanding is there was a discussion that is between yourself and that is National Treasury also on the findings, because Mr. Molefe indicated that you had a parallel process where PwC that conducted its own report and National Treasury conducted its own report. Obviously, before you could hand over, because that's what he said, he handed over the report that is to National Treasury. Am I correct? Is that what you indicate? Yes. I'm saying there was an engagement that is on the issues raised in the first report, the 48 issues, between yourself and National Treasury. Was there no engagement that is on those issues?
Chair, if we can be given the exact area of the PwC report that talks about that. But there has been numerous engagements with the National Treasury. In fact, as a matter of record, the National Treasury made 11 written requests to us, and we responded in 20 letters and annexures that I have here that I can hand over if the committee wants them. But there were a lot of engagements. I just wanted clarity on exactly the engagements that you're referring to and which part of the PwC report they're in.
No, I'll come back on that. But let's go back to the issue of the supply chain management. Initially, in your response, you said you complied, that is with the PFMA. And my understanding is you do have an in-house, that is supply chain management procedure. Is your in-house supply chain management procedure in line with the PFMA? Because you are expected, that is to comply with the PFMA. And in drafting your own, that is internal procedure, your internal procedure must talk to, that is the act, being the supply chain, that is the PFMA, sorry.
I can confirm that the supply chain management procedure complies with the Constitution, the PFMA, the Triple PFA, and various other pieces of legislation that govern public procurement.
Now, Chair, thanks, I'll come back. Can
All
I
right.
allow other members to raise other questions?
Okay. No, that's fine. Before we raise other matters, maybe let's, and I don't want that to be the focus, okay, comrades? If it is, well, maybe at the end, but it can't be right at the beginning. The substance and the focus will be the PwC report. Comrade, Chairperson of the board, this issue around you not cooperating with the National Treasury in terms of providing information, why is it making the rounds? Where does it come from? Why are we not providing National Treasury with the documents that they require so that this issue can be sorted out?
Well, you know, I really don't know how this whole thing came about, because we are informed by management, by the CEO, by CFO. Every time National Treasury raises a query, they answer it. It may take time on some questions because there are volumes and volumes of documents that are considered by the tender committee. To sift through all the documents and get the relevant information they're asking about may take time, but we always cooperate. So I've been at a loss as to why people keep saying we are not cooperating. Because why should we not cooperate? You know, I mean, they could even come to Eskom itself and probably sit there and go through all the documentation. There's nothing hidden.
Okay. No, that's fine. If you...
Chair, can I make a follow-up on this?
See,
Because
I will only allow Comrade Kekane at this stage to make
Yes.
a follow-up. Others, let's deal with it last.
Yeah.
But our initial follow-ups must be on PwC so that we don't get sidetracked. Yes,
Chairperson,
Comrade.
I appealed to one of your team members to focus on Tegeta. And the answer that I want, they must be based on Tegeta. Do you have evidence? Because you are saying you are cooperating with Eskom. do you have evidence to prove that the request from Eskom was dealt with, that is by your team? From National Treasury was dealt with by a team. That's what I mean.
All I can say is, can they provide you with the letters from National Treasury and the responses that were sent to National Treasury? I think that will put this thing in final perspective, because there's been an exchange of information on Tegeta. Why was the prepayment made? Why was this done? And so on and so on. All those issues have been addressed.
All right.
Chair.
No. I think the relevant people to talk is National Treasury, because if National Treasury says no, we have cooperation, then there is no point for us to raise anything. If they say there is no cooperation, still it is not so much what we say than what Eskom says and how we have that smoothed out. National Treasury, can you confirm that indeed you get the necessary cooperation from Eskom in relation to these investigations?
Thank you, Chair. From the period we requested documents, obviously there were delays from Eskom until we issued the first draft report on the 12th of April 2016, which we wanted the response in May 2016. Unfortunately, those delays, they were spread between National Treasury and Eskom, but finally we received the response on the 30th of August 2016. From there, we exchanged documents. You remember when we came here in November, you wanted us to present the report early January or February, but unfortunately it couldn't happen because we were exchanging documents. And from January to now, we were exchanging documents. There was no issue of saying they are not cooperating, unless if the member is confusing the issue of Transnet, the issue of SABC, where we haven't received documents even now.
So with Eskom, there is no question of non-cooperation?
Now, there's no issue of no cooperation.
Okay, no, that's fine. Now,
I'm not going to pursue this matter anymore, because we even gave you an instruction to write a letter, because that's the information that we received, that there's outstanding information from Eskom, and hence National Treasury cannot complete its report. But today, if National Treasury is saying they've got all the information that they requested from Eskom, it's fine.
All right.
Chairperson, for me,
Ross,
on a point of clarity,
no.
On a point of clarity.
No, wait. You are going to get your opportunity to talk. But I want to say, comrades, I would want us to follow up on the questions that Comrade Kekane raised on PwC. That's what you're coming on. All right? Fine.
Yes, Chairperson.
Ross?
Just on the PwC issues,
Sure.
and the reports. I think for me, to give clarity is the main question is.
No, can I just make a request, comrades, that if you don't have a question, at least let it not be more than 3 questions. Please, let it not be more than 3 questions, and then we'll make rounds so that others can also have space.
Firstly,
yes,
as Comrade Kekane has said, he was concerned with regards to Eskom Tegeta, and in all 4 the contracts, to my investigations that I've done, all 4 the contracts constitute no competitive bidding, and it is an unsolicited bid that was provided. And in terms of the legality of the contract, that puts the whole contract for me in a questionable situation. And you have to provide us the answer today whether that contract is a valid contract or not, and whether you have, in terms of the PFMA, engaged in competitive bidding in all the contracts. And the question is why did, and the information is that there were no competitive bidding. And the question is why this preferential treatment to Tegeta? Why was Tegeta exonerated from following due process, due diligence in this regard? Now, secondly, also the question with regards to what you're driving towards is the review of the contracts. Now, my question would be, if you want to review an unlawful contracts, certainly that cannot be right. What would your proposals be in this regard? Let me take you through why I'm saying there were non-compliance also in terms of the contract, and this is the point. Non-compliance in terms of pre-certified stockpiles, non-compliance with regards to coal quality parameters, comply with the quality specifications, and did management comply to all these requirements? Now, certainly if we coming to the board and the oversight role of the board chairperson as my second question, as the executive authority, certainly the board had an oversight role when the report of PricewaterhouseCoopers 2015 report. Did you take note of the report, and what was the actions that you've taken in this regard to take some actions in terms of your oversight responsibility? Let me just then also say, I have it here. You see, in terms of the oversight responsibility on the medium-term procurement, a divisional executive was given powers to give effect to the mandate. But the PED continued with the mandate of the Board of Directors to enter into contracts in excess of 3 billion each, committing Eskom for over 10 years or more with a single signing authority. Can I ask the chairperson of the board to explain this? Is what our research is indicating, a single signing authority. That simply cannot be correct in terms of a non-competitive bidding process. And what was the actions that the board did in terms of your fiduciary responsibilities?
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. 3 questions. Can you respond to them?
In 2008, the Eskom board enacted a mandate for sole buyer, sole signatory in cases of emergency coal supplies. There was no competitive bidding in instances where there was immediate need or
Just a minute.
emergency. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Okay. All right.
So there was non-competitive bidding has been the hallmark of Eskom in terms of short-term contracts, sanctioned by the board 2008. Now, arising from all these evaluations, we changed that. This board changed that and said there will be a request for proposals that are in the market. And this, of course, obviously, very extreme circumstances happen. But the consequence of that, Chairperson, is that right now, 4 stations stand at risk of load shedding because we have not secured the millions of tons of stockpile that we need when we go to winter. That is the situation. But we changed it, but the consequences may not be very, very good for the country.
Chair, if I can just add, clarify.
Okay.
Since Eskom was established, we've been operating on cost-plus mines. The current cost-plus mines that are there in Eskom, over the last 5 years, we've spent 74.5 billion. Those original contracts did not have competitive bids. Eskom has never had a culture of doing competitive bids. It is something that we have just introduced. And those companies that happen to be white-owned companies acquired, they are doing business with Eskom. Over the last 5 years, it was 74 billion, and there were no competitive bids. And so in 2008, this issue of the emergency supplies was also introduced, and we have just changed it. Our idea is to move away. We have got an instruction from the minister to stop doing cost-plus mines and to introduce black economic empowerment and competitive bids. This is things that we are now beginning to change in the last 2 to 3 years.
All right. Okay.
Sorry, Chair, if I can also add to the response. I think, first and foremost, we are not aware of whether either the PwC report or the National Treasury report calling into question the legality of the Tegeta contract.
No, I think let's stop it right there, because I think the 2 gentlemen have cleared the issues. I think the base of his question was the fact that these were unsolicited bids, which means there was no competitive bidding. So that has been clarified. Honorable Mazoli.
Thank you, Chairperson.
What happened to giving chance to members of the committee first, and then we can give other MPs?
Chair, on a point of
visitors
order, the Public
No.
Enterprises Committee was invited to this meeting, so we are as much participants
No,
as the
Honorable
members of
Mazoli,
Scopa.
Honorable Mazoli, you are not chairing this meeting. There's a chairperson in this meeting. No, but just be patient. She's soliciting clarity from the chairperson, not from you. You must. I am a whip of this committee. You can't come and tell us what to do. Okay, then.
Okay,
I'm
all
saying that
right.
at this moment, don't go on like that.
Okay. Let's. These are the people who must focus on, comrades. Let's not turn on to each other. These are the people who
been
must
having
focus
a way we've been working, Chairperson. We cannot change it today. Can we give a chance to members of the committee first?
You see, comrades, you see, that, for me, that's where the problem arises. Because when Honorable Waters was here the last time, I did that. And comrades were like, no, it was not. I actually did that and said he will come last. And some comrades said, no, give him. So I'm doing that today. And then you remember, no, we should not do that. Listen. So please continue, Honorable Mazole. I'm coming this way.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and you do have my utmost respect as Chair of this committee. Chair, in terms of Tegeta and the due diligence that was looked at by PwC, on the 11th of April 2016, we know that an urgent board meeting was called to arrange and approve the prepayment for coal. This was also on the same day that Tegeta informed the business rescue practitioners of Optimum Coal Holdings that it had a 600 million rand short of the 2.15 billion rand summit required to attain the mine. Chairperson, Eskom and Tegeta, however, argued that the prepayment for the coal was a standard and long-standing procedure. However, we know that this is now not true. Then at the time, Mashile Koko lied not only openly on a television interview, but also to Parliament when he absolutely refuted the fact that the 600 million rand prepayment was in fact conducted. So my first question is, why the lies and why the necessity to try and hide the 600 million rand prepayment? And secondly, Chair, I do find it quizzical, and I believe that the Public Protector also found it quizzical, that CEO of Eskom, Brian Molefe, had to provide approval for the supply of coal from the Optimum coal mine to Hendrina when approvals for the supply contract had already been established. So if we could just have that explanation, please.
Well, no, wait. I hear your question. Maybe if we could pack it, and because it comes after the two reports that we dealt with, but it is relevant. It is relevant. It's a relevant question. That's why I'm saying maybe let's pack it. And then maybe when we're done, it is part of those questions that, if related, can be responded to. But the reports we're dealing with, it's the November 2016 report. So the issues, and in relation to the Tegeta Brakfontein, is it Brakfontein? Yeah, Brakfontein mine. So any other related issues outside that narrowly, maybe let's put it as second phase. So I would say let's pack it. I'm sure Eskom does have an answer and they wanted to quickly respond to it, but I want us to focus on this first. And once we're done with this and we have time, then maybe we can. Hlengwa?
Chairperson, thank you very much. I'm going to just want to raise this. I know that the issue of documents has been quote-unquote put to rest, but I do wish to draw your attention, Chair, to the report 26 November 2015 of PwC, page 86 of that report, Chair, in the observations under record management, and I'm just saying this in passing before I go to my question, is one of the observations is that not all required documents were made available. So, Chair, I'm quite uneasy to just go past that particular aspect of document, even when PwC raises a concern about documents being made available. I believe it's something we need to look at because it's got far-reaching consequences. One of the challenges, Chair, there is that it was difficult to establish a timeline and audit trail of the process, as many of the documents that were reviewed were not dated. So this calls into question record management in its entirety, and I really believe we can't just willy-nilly, Chair, go past that. But Chair, allow me to move on, because one of the findings is that there is no evidence that Tegeta complied with additional water use license requirements. So, Chair, I would just like a full explanation in terms of the due process that was followed in looking into the compliance of Tegeta, and from A to Z, the alpha and omega compliance of Tegeta, and whether their water use license was actually valid and whether it actually complied. Because I think that calls into question the validity of what's looking at. So I'm very specific. I want to get an explanation, fully fledged one, on the circumstances around the water use license of Tegeta. Thanks, Chair.
All right. 2 questions. Water use documentation. Can we have a response to those 2 questions? Documentation and water use. Yes, Chair.
But, you know, Chairperson, honorable members, that's precisely why our internal audit function hired the services of PwC, because they realize that there are some areas that need attention. So in terms of management failing to probably keep records and all that, that came out of this investigation. So we know there's a problem in terms of handling documents. In terms of water use, I mean, it's the Department of Water and Sanitation that really enforces water utilization conditions. For us, when a company has got a water license, we start work. You know, we don't monitor them, but we need to see that they have got a license. Probably the CEO can add to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Chair, I was very specific, with all due respect to NOMAF, whether that was, but what I'm saying is that not all required documents were made available. That's what I'm zooming into. So PwC was conducting an investigation commissioned by Eskom, and it's PwC saying that not all the documents they require. I do not believe that was something which was picked up. That observation is an outcome of an investigation. On the issue of water, Chair, why I raised the issue is because National Treasury goes on to say there is no evidence that Eskom ensured that Tegeta complied with all the legislative requirements. So whether it's Department of Water Affairs, the question then becomes, what did Eskom do to ensure that whomever they were working with complied? That's the scope of it. It may be one thing that water does it, it's fine. But when you are actually now confronted with having to sign off on a contract or a deal or whatever, it's basic logic that you ensure that there's people comply. And here it's Treasury saying that there's no evidence that Eskom made that determination.
No, that's fine. Let's talk to the issue of keeping documents.
Yes.
Because when you said PwC must investigate, it means they needed to have access to documents. Then they come to your offices, they find that there are no documents. What is the problem with document management?
Chair, the issue of record management was identified in the PwC report as a problem. It was one of the 48 issues that has since been resolved. So during
Yeah, I think the question is why did you have a problem with managing
first
documents? Why did that happen?
Yeah, it was between 2013 and 15. Maybe Ms. Tegeta can.
As indicated by my CE, the contract negotiation between Tegeta and Eskom extended over a long period of time. And therefore, at the time that PwC came through, we were accessing various documents from various areas. They did highlight to us that it's an indication that we need to ensure that we have a centralized database for our documentation. We've addressed that issue, and we do have a centralized database for our documentation. Secondly, on the water use license issue, Tegeta Brackfontein mine, at the time that we signed the contract, had a valid water use license.
Comrade Ment?
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, I want to follow up from where Hlengwa left off in terms of documentation. When you look at the report of 26 November the one of PwC, on various areas where they should have considered before signing the contract, page 35, it shows there was environmental and legal requirements, and it lists everything. Then you go to health and safety requirements. No information was provided. You go to technical requirements. It stipulates there that furthermore, the report does not indicate who the author is, and neither is it dated or signed. So the findings of PwC are saying some of health elements were never done prior to the signing of the contract, and you are saying they were done. Yet PwC says they were non-existing. I find it very hard to believe. How do you sign a contract without conducting all elements that you have to consider and conduct a proper investigation and have proper documentation and certificates of health and safety and requirements, technical requirements, water? How did you sign a contract without considering those? That's my first question. And then on page 36, it shows us that contracting, under the subheading contracting, a coal supply agreement herein referred to as the contract was signed on the 26th of March 2013. Yet the letter that comes from Eskom, which is on our file, is page 337. It shows paragraph 13.1.2. One of the requirements for entering into a coal supply agreement with Eskom is the submission of a valid water use license. At the conclusion of the CSA with the supplier in March 2015, the supplier had a water use license issued 22 December 2014. Contract signed 2013. How does it happen?
The contract was signed in March 2015. The valid water use license was signed in December 2014. So prior to signing of the contract, the supplier had a valid water use license. With regards to the elements on the health and safety requirements and the environment, etc., and the technical assessments, the technical assessments were done. As indicated, it is part of our due diligence that was conducted from 2013 until the signing of the contract. There are various elements of the due diligence that is done, which includes, among others, site visits. So at the time that the contract is signed, and depending on where, at what stage the mine is, some of the elements, for example, safety, on-site safety, would then be conducted when the mine is in operation. So it's the points coming out of the PwC are a result in indicating that you have done various things, from the due diligences, site visits, etc. And at that stage, they wanted documentation of all those areas. But technical assessments were done, environmental assessments were done.
All right, Comrade Vincent.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Chair. Just 3 questions. Let's go back to the water use license. The Eskom representative indicates that the water use license, or there was a water use license, valid one, in December 2014, and the contract was signed in 2015. However, there's a letter written by the acting provincial head of Mpumalanga 2016. Conclusion. It can be concluded that Tegeta Resources and Exploration, Pty Limited, does not comply with some of the conditions of a water use license. This is in 2016. Now, can somebody explain to me, how do you have a valid water use license if you've not complied? And this is signed by the department in 2016. I'm not understanding this, that in 2014 we can claim that we've got a valid water use license. And yet in 2016, the department that is responsible for giving those licenses says, in its conclusion, that it does not comply. It goes further to say the mine does not submit the required documents to the department at a frequency specified by the grant license. So this letter of 2016 clearly says, and I'm sure it was sent to the department, that says that you're not doing anything that was expected of you to do. And yet you come and say to us that in 2014 it was all done. So somebody must just explain that to me, Chair. I've got 3 questions, Chair.
Okay. All right. No, let them respond to this one. Chair?
Well, departments, whether it's minerals or water, and safety people, conduct repeated visits to mining sites to check exactly whether the person who holds the mining license is complying in every respect with the requirements. So it doesn't mean once I've got a water use license, I can just be seen as having complied completely. There will be further inspections to show whether, in fact, I'm still complying. So that is, for instance, the water drainage was an issue that was later raised at some stage by the Department of Water. So it's really up to DMR and Water Affairs to bring sanctions to the owner of the mining rights when they fail to comply.
Chair, if I can add, it's a bit like driving over the speed limit when you have a valid driver's license.
Yes, Comrade Vincent?
I'm not sure. I understand what the chairperson is saying. I'm not sure how you are adding to that it's like driving over the speed limit with a license. It doesn't make it right, Mr. Molife. It doesn't make it right. And if the policeman doesn't give you a ticket for it at Joburg Metro, Parliament will give you a ticket for it. You can't come here and say it's like driving without a license and expect Scopa to accept that. And that's why I'm saying I can hear what Mr. or the chairperson is saying. But this other statement, in fact, muddies the water.
All right. Let's
Chair, I would wish to unreservedly apologize.
right. Let's
Let me go to the second question.
second question.
Chair, again, and I think this is on, I think this is on compliance, and maybe Treasury will have to come in here if what they are saying to us is not true. And it was raised by the Honorable Kekana and responded to. When somebody asked the question why Tegeta was given this contract, although it was not on the suppliers list. And it was responded to that the minister or somebody decided scrap the suppliers list and do everything from scratch. Somebody respond, or was I understanding it incorrectly? Did I understand it incorrectly? Okay, then let me ask the question. If that was incorrect, I withdraw. Why was Tegeta given a contract when it was not on the supplier pre-qualification list? Because I understood when Kekana asked that question that that was somehow done away with. Why were they given if they were not on the suppliers list? If that could be the first question, Chair. Or let me put the whole question. I'm asking that question specifically because the supply chain, the supply management procedures of Eskom insists that it must be that. Now, you're either breaking your supply chain prescripts, or you change the rules without changing the prescripts. Which one is the correct one? Because you can't change it as you go along. It also says, and this is just the second point that I'm making, I'm talking about compliance or the lack thereof. So the one is if that's what the recommendation says in terms of who can do business, why didn't you? The second one is, I never understood, and I'm not sure why Honorable Kekana didn't pursue it further. When the question was asked about whether those that were involved in the negotiations and throughout the process declared their interest. And if I understood it correctly, it was at the time you were not supposed to declare interest. I've never heard such before in my life. I've never ever heard before that you can, in any organization, that you can be party to a contract without declaring your interest. It's always been that you must recuse yourself. Somebody said it was not necessary. But the procedure of Eskom requires that you do it. The procedure of Eskom requires that you do it. (32/1034). That is on Treasury slide number 12. And it's number 1 on the PwC report. I don't know where it is. But I'm saying Eskom's procedures say you must declare. Eskom's procedures say you must be on the supply preference or pre-qualifications. None of that was complied with. Now I'm asking the question. How is it possible that you think you can do that and not get a qualification just from an audit report, never mind PwC? If you don't comply with prescripts, how do you think you're going to get an unqualified report? The third one, Chair, and my final one for this round. And again, maybe we're not the experts on this thing, Chair. On slide number 18 of National Treasury, I think it is. The observation is the first health and safety evaluation was conducted 8 days after the contract was signed. The on-site was conducted 2.5 months after the contract was signed. Now, again, maybe things work differently, but I would have thought, Chair, that by the time you sign the contract, certain prerequisites must be in place. Water use license. When you do any development, it's a water use license. The health, I'm not an expert, but it says the first one. So I would imagine that it would be necessary that there's a health check or something. But it says it was done 8 days after the contract was signed. And I'm just asking the question, if it is a requisite to have these things before you sign the contract, why is it that the contract was signed before these things were done, or is it a lack of understanding from our side? Because if it was a requirement that there must be a health or a water use or a stormwater drain, whatever it might be, if those are prerequisites for a valid contract, it then begs the question that when this thing was signed 8 days before the health, was it a valid contract? I'm not making a judgment one way or the other. I'm asking the question. If it's a prerequisite for a valid contract, and the contract was signed without these things done, was it a valid contract that was signed, Chair? So those are the three questions. And I mean, ultimately, Chair, the board must be able to answer these questions. It's because they are the accounting authority. How is it possible that we do such major business and the board is unable to, before it's picked up by Tegeta, not Tegeta, picked up by PwC, picked up by somebody else, and only thereafter the board finds out when their major responsibility is, and let me repeat it, the board is responsible for maintaining and upkeeping the assets and the liabilities of whichever entity it looks after. Thanks, Chair.
All right, let's get a response, Chair.
Just as a preliminary to the official responsible responding, we are ensuring that the national assets are kept properly. And that is why from time to time we seek combined assurance, not just from officials, but from professionals like PwC. It is for that reason. Now, when I apply for a mining contract, DMR obviously has a lot of declarations that are required, but the actual inspection of health and safety happens when we are operating the mine. They come there and they see how dust abatement is done, what is the safety equipment that your people have, the masks, the gloves, and so on. That happens when we are operating. So it cannot be a priori before we operate. Equally with the water license. Water license is there, then they check you whether in fact you are observing the rules. But I will get the professionals to answer further.
Sorry, Chair. Just before that's why I said maybe Treasury must come in. Just before the officials answer it, and I take your point, sir. What we have before us here as Parliament, as I suppose an observation or a response from somebody, it says health and safety checks could not be performed as the mine at the time as the mine was at the time not operating. That's what we got from your report as Treasury. That's why I'm asking the question, why would they make an observation that it was signed 8 days later, and then on the other side it could not be performed as the mine was not operating at the time? And I hear what you're saying, sir, that it must operate before you can check it. But if we get information from a government department that says this is a problem, I'm not government, I'm saying all of you, including Treasury, are government. All of you must then, somebody must answer to us, because why would Parliament get something that and unless we're not understanding it correctly, National Treasury, So why my colleague raised it? Because it was raised as a concern. The board comes and says, well, it's not necessarily possible because you must wait for the board to be, or not the board, for the mine to be in operation. And it's a finding or an observation. So I'm asking the question, Chair, are we, what do you call it? Are we sensationalizing this thing because we're not getting proper information? Or what is happening? Because otherwise it would never even have arisen that there was no health license.
Yes, Chair.
I would really beg the honorable member to understand that if there are no operations going on, then there's nothing to inspect. You know? Sure.
All right. No, that's fine. Let's hear from National Treasury what their perspective is.
Thanks. I don't know that Eskom should be having a file like this, which I don't know whether Ntombi gave them a file. I wanted to refer to page 192, which is 48 of the PwC report.
Is it 48 or 38?
38, 192 in terms of the marking pen numbers.
All right.
192.
Yeah.
Eskom should have a file so that we can refer to that one. That report has got, on that page, you'll see there are 3 columns. There's the ref, number 1, the findings, which these findings are the findings from the review done by PwC. Then you will have the last column, which those are comments from Eskom management, not Treasury. Under findings, PwC is highlighting non-compliance with supply chain management, which according to us or our views that if there are a number of compliance like they are indicated there, that procurement becomes irregular. But instead of maybe Eskom giving new comments, because their comments are already there. In the first one, it says this was an oversight. It means it was not done. Is Eskom still standing on that comment? A formal declaration of interest process is now being implemented. Why was it not implemented? I'm saying those are the comments that were given by Eskom. When they are responding, obviously they should say, okay, this is what we said when we gave this comment. Are we changing what we said there? Because we agreed that there was non-compliance. If we have agreed, the question is, was this non-compliance recorded somewhere in their books? If it was not recorded, why? The same questions, for example, we asked them to the Auditor General and says, Auditor General, we have this PwC report. There are a lot of questions because Eskom agreed with this non-compliance. Why were these non-compliance not red flagged in the financial statements? Then the Auditor General called Sizwe Nzaluba Gobodo, and they met with them to say, but we see that these non-compliance are there in the report. Why are they not there in your audit? Sizwe Nzaluba also requested to meet with National Treasury, and we met with them, we asked them, did you see this PwC report with all these non-compliance that are here? When it says health and safety requirements, it's a prerequisite. It is a prerequisite. And even during the minutes of the pre-evaluation, Eskom officials themselves, they were saying, because this mine is not operating, you won't be able to do combustion tests, even in their minutes which are recorded there. They said, before you even start engaging or operating, the combustion test should have been done, this and this. But the issue is that because in all the minutes, Tegeta was saying, we are not operating the mine. Why should you excuse them because they were not operating the mine? It's not Eskom's problem. It was Tegeta's problem of not operating the mine. And they should have operated the mine before they could sign the contract because those were prerequisites. And they're there, you can read from the minutes or the pre-qualifications, which are Eskom's minutes. They were complaining to say this mine is not operating. In one of the minutes they said, can you go and give us a sample? Because we need to check whether the 4 seam upper and the 4 seam lower, when they are combined, this will be relevant for Eskom. And then the Tegeta says, we are not the mine is not operating now. But they still signed the contract on the 10th of March before the mine could. That's why even the health and safety could not be done, because the mine was not operating. They should have allowed the mine to operate first so that they can fulfill the other requirements before.
All right. Okay, Tim?
Thank you, Chair.
The only other one, Chair, was the non-compliance with your procurement and supply chain management. The declaration, I still don't buy the declaration story. I don't know why. They haven't responded to the declaration story, and they've not answered the question of the very first one I asked, that on page number on page 12 of Treasury's report, which was that they were not on the suppliers list, although it's in their policy.
In terms of on the pre-qualification and being on the supply list, as indicated, that was previously from the supply development and localization section within Eskom. And the discussions that we had with them is that putting suppliers on a pre-qualification then excludes other suppliers from possibly being looked at from a technical perspective. So what was requested is that, and it's done across the board, is that we do technical evaluations of all the suppliers. Once we are satisfied on a technical element of the supply, then we would then put them forward to the supply development and localization for them to be placed on the pre-qualification database of theirs, for them to be placed on our vendor database. So it was a requirement to try and allow for more suppliers than only having a pre-qualification.
Then on general supply chain management processes that seemed not to, because comrades, I think when you look at the first report, you'll find that basically there are findings in all the 4 mines. We may be talking about Tegeta, but even in the other 3 mines, if you go to page 177 to 179, 182 to 186, 188 to 189, you'll find all these findings that Comrade Vincent is talking about around issues of non-compliance with processes. Was this reflective of, because they sampled 4 mines, so does it mean that if we had gone to every other supplier, we would have picked up a number or a lot of these weaknesses? What was happening? Yes, Chair. Chairperson. Let him respond to that question. Okay, just a minute.
I thought, Chairperson, you were right when you said earlier, let's look at what we've been presented with, which was to deal with Tegeta. Now as you read the report, quite a lot of issues are beginning to come up. Maybe we should re-look at the whole process of how do we handle this matter itself. Yes, we are supposed to focus on Tegeta, but there are other mines and the problem seems to be common. I don't know, do you want us to resolve all those things which will keep us yet until late afternoon? Or how do you want us to take the approach?
No, let's focus on Tegeta. I was merely saying, because you also don't want to create an impression that the non-compliance is only happened with Tegeta in isolation to everything else. But the question that Comrade Vincent has raised, generally on the supply chain processes and how they were managed. But otherwise, we remain focused.
With,
Well-
with,
Okay.
with regards to the supply chain processes and the audit that was conducted by PwC, correctly they sampled 4 suppliers, and I provide this context as the 4 suppliers came into the Eskom system from 2008. So over the period of at least the 10 years, there has also been a change in terms of our supply chain procedures, which was previously a 32188 and is now a 32134. So in the assessment that PwC utilized, they utilized some of the elements of the 1034, which is the current, on suppliers that predated that element.
I thought you would just say, you know what, we were bad when it came to compliance. And this is what we've done to sort things out. Tim?
Thank you, Chair. Finally. Chair, if you can just grant me a bit of license. Are you familiar with, either yourself or your operations manager there, are you familiar with Treasury Note 11 of 2008? Do you know what it deals with? Can I have an answer? Do you know what it deals with? Treasury Note number 11 of 2008. I'll take your silence as an admission of ignorance. Treasury Note 11 of 2008 deals with unsolicited bids. 2008. When you proudly said that, well, you know, there was this mandate from before that we were following, and it was these people in before doing wrong things. Well, there was a Treasury Note at that time which specifically spells out how to do things. So you cannot rely on an argument that says that you were following a mandate unwittingly from previous time, from a previous evil era. And that's why you got into this trouble. Because if you'd been concentrating on Treasury Notes, you would know the correct procedure for unsolicited bids. Now, our friend over there said that we don't like to close the list of potential bidders. I'll tell you why. It's to open it up for people to take an angle and to get work through unsolicited bids. That's exactly why, because the whole idea of putting together a panel is to have a list of pre-approved suppliers that you know will comply. You've been through the entire process with them. So please, you must not think that you pull the wool over our eyes on that one. My colleague, Honourable Smith, referred to declaration of interest. Well, if you once again, you said quite incredibly, ma'am, that there was no need for declaration of interest. But I'd like to refer you again to Treasury Note 11 of 2008. 2.2E of that Treasury Note specifically says that there has to be a declaration of interest. And if you take the time, 2.1 says that you've got to use an unsolicited bid only when you've done a feasibility study, only when the product is innovative, only when the product represents an innovative approach, only when it is a new and cost-effective method of service delivery. It specifically also says under 2.3 that it must be a product that is not an easy supply. Something that's new, something that's original, i.e. not coal. Coal's all over the place. There's nothing new about it. It's been around since time immemorial. And now suddenly you're saying that, oh, we must find a new. The bottom line here is that you've opened this process, you've opened that thing so that you can allow people like Tegeta to sneak in an unsolicited bid. Now here's where I'm going to prove my point. You have also advised us that How on earth can you be accusing us of only using Tegeta? There have been 33 other suppliers that have been forced to go through this process. Stated right here in your documents. So can you tell us today that you will commit to giving us a full dossier of every single one of those 33 other suppliers that also applied, went through all the prescriptions of the procurement process, and for some reason were turned down, and only Tegeta and Msumbiti were approved? Will you be able to give us that full list? Not in terms of your procurement processes, because you think you're still dealing with weird mandates from 10 years ago. I'm talking about in terms of Treasury rules, Treasury notes, and in terms of the PFMA. Can you give us that undertaking? Because that will show that you went through a competitive process. But I believe that you will not be able to show that. Thank you.
I'm going to start with the compliance issues, Mr. Chair. At the time, Honourable Member, Eskom was exempt from the triple PFA, and therefore the Treasury notes do not apply to Eskom. However, we do have provisions in regard to unsolicited bids in both our procurement policies, and coal has very specific specifications. So each resource is different, but my colleague on my left will elaborate on that. In respect of the declaration of interest, while there was no specific requirement for people at negotiation team level to do that, Eskom has a system of annual declaration of interest in terms of the various legislation, and that is done annually. What the primary energy colleagues at the time did not do was do it for each specific transaction, and that process has been corrected and implemented.
To answer your question about the 33 suppliers, we can provide the details of the 33 suppliers that came under, that are referred to in the document.
No, I don't need a list of names. I need a dossier which shows that they all went through exactly the same process as Tegeta and Msumbiti. Can you provide that?
Yes.
Right, Comrade Chilwan. I'm going to jump you, Comrade Kekan. Yeah, after I've covered everybody. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to ask just one direct question, Chairperson, and then I will continue after they've answered me. I'm going to ask, who was the CEO and the chairperson of the board between 2008 and 2015 March? Thank you.
Well, I was chairperson of the board somewhere from March 2015. Before that, I was...
No, Baba. Who was the chairperson of the board between 2008 and March 20... Did you say 15?
Yes, when the deal was...
yes. Who was the chairperson and who was the CEO?
The chairman was Bobby Gotzel at one point. The chief executive officer was Brian Damas, and then there was Zola Tsotsi. Brian Damas was there, and then during Mr. Tsotsi's tenure, I think there was also Tadiso Matola.
All right.
Chairperson, I think you understand why I'm asking this question. Because as this committee, we deal with the past. the past can only assist us to arrive at a conclusion on how do we go on with the situation. Thank you. I think we've noted that. We'll discuss it at a meeting, Chairperson. My second question, I don't know whether it's a second question or it's a preamble question, Chair. How much, Mr. Molefe, how much does this Tegeta contract cost, and how long or what is the period that you have agreed upon with?
The period is a 10-year contract. The value of this specific Brakfontein contract is approximately 4 billion.
How much? Okay.
I was requested to respond to the commencement date of the contract was from the 1st of April 2015 for a 10-year period. The value is estimated at 4 billion.
How much are they charging you per ton? I don't know, call it tons or ton or truck, I don't know.
I would like to give the cost in a rand per gigajoule. The base price for this contract is 13 rand 50 cents per gigajoule as the base price.
Okay, thank you for that information. Chairperson, there's this page, man. There's where.
I thought you would want to know, is 13 rand compared to what?
No, I'm still coming to that one.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm still coming to that one, but there's this page that I'm looking for, can't find it. On the 4 billion, is it, how do you calculate it? The economics people calculate it, inflation, increase, is it, I don't know whether interest free, something like that, between that period of 10 years. Is it going to increase or is going to be at that 4.8 billion?
The base price of 13 rand 50 is subject to escalations as per the contract. There's an escalation basket. Annually, there are some elements that escalate yearly, and there's some elements that escalate or reduce monthly. For an example, it is diesel.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm still on my second question. You get, I'm trying to synergize the information. Chair, there's somewhere where it was written that this contract of Tegeta was done hastily and, I think, what is the correct word of English? It was in an emergency, hastily. I think, CEO, you mentioned it earlier, if I correctly remember. But I just want to get, because I've heard so many members, they've asked, procedures were not followed. But I'm just going to ask a direct question, Mr. Molefe. What happened? Can we get a background? How did Tegeta ended up getting this contract out of all these issues that are happening? Thank you, Chairperson. That's it's my first question.
Second.
Second,
yeah.
Okay.
This contract was negotiated over a 2-year period, and so this is the Brakfontein contract. Perhaps what you are talking about is the prepayment contract. The prepayment contract with Optimum that was bought by Tegeta from Glencore. That is the one I think Ms. Mazzoni also was referring to. But that is not in the PwC report. That is a completely different deal, unless if the chairperson allows us to go into that particular transaction. To
Chairperson.
explain what happened there.
Yeah, just to interrupt. Chairperson, with your indulgence, I think this is a matter of national interest and Tegeta and whatever, Brakfontein, because they come out with one thing. I think we'll really ask for your indulgence so that we hear the explanation. Maybe it will assist us. I don't know. It's upon on your chairperson to decide.
All right. No, it's fine. When Honorable Mazoli asked the question, I said, let's pack it. I did not say let's dismiss it. I said, let's pack it. Let's deal with the PwC reports. And when we're done, then we can find time to, because I didn't want us to go there and then get sidetracked from the essence of why we're here today.
So you say we pack it or they can
I'm saying,
respond?
no, let's pack it. They will respond to it later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chairperson, then let me go to, then it means I'm going to my second question.
All right.
On page 2 of the report presented, slide 3. I think it's the response in terms of the steps which you have taken out of the PwC report. There's where you talk about 78%, 74, 78%, 73 of major coal suppliers that are non-black owned. Can we just get a background on that one? And I will link it up, Chairperson, to the question, the first question that I asked, that this Tegeta, how long are they going to operate? Can we just get an indication of how does these contracts of Eskom operate? Because some of them, they were there, they were approved, they were appointed, where there's no synergy, there's no compliance in terms of the treasury regulation, supply chain management, even of their own. But at the same time, because they operate, Eskom operate as on its own business model, if I can say, which they will say, she has just said that some of the treasury regulation has exempted them. If we can just get a background on that one. Thank you.
All right, let's go to your last question. I think the issue around percentage of, I think the question of where do you get your coal supplies from, and then disaggregate it. Can we also deal with it later, because it will then go beyond, because I see that Tegeta is only contributing 6.7% of the total supply. The rest comes from elsewhere, and you want them to just expand a bit on it. Let's note it. It will be responded to.
The person, they will just note it and then they will respond to
it. Yes.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity, Chair.
All right. Comrade Kuno.
Thank you, Chairperson. I wanted to start by saying that we are good listeners here, Scopa, and we need to be taken seriously. I think we have our stakeholders that we work with, and it will be good and proper if we are given information that we can use profitably so for South Africans. And I'm talking to Soli, because what he's saying today, the information that he's giving today, I think it will be improper for us if we don't correct that, because we always say to others, like the Auditor General, give us correct information. What he gave us earlier on was not what he gave in the previous meeting. I think you know what I'm talking about, the fact of the communication between him, between Treasury and Eskom. I think today we got another side that we did not know, and the reason why it made us so angry was because they are not communicating and not giving correct information at the right time. So I just wanted to put that matter into perspective, that we're really taking our job seriously and we're good listeners and we don't forget what we have asked and what you communicate to us. But Chairperson, when you look at the PwC report, we were told that there were officials who were suspended. I wanted to know who are those officials and how long have they been suspended? Those officials who didn't take the compliance into cognizant. But again, there's been a reference, Chairperson, that the 1034 rules only came into application after March 2015. My interest is, what kind of rules or regulations were you using before 2015? That's one question, Chairperson. The other question, Mr. Molefe keeps on telling us more about pre-qualification, and I don't think we are all privy to that. If he can explain thoroughly what is this pre-qualifications, so that we can also apply our minds if this contract was awarded fairly to others. And there are contracts that you have said. I think my question adds to what Comrade Shilwani has asked. I'm not sure if it's part of those that you said we should flag and ask later. When you started with your briefing, that 3 minutes that we gave him at the beginning, you talked about contracts that are about to lapse, or the contracts that have already expired. Can you explain to us these contracts? Because I think later when we really deal with page 2, your third slide, we'll then dwell into that. If you could just explain thoroughly to us so that we understand what you're talking about. And when you say that your records have, as part of the 43 points that you had that were concerns, that you have done 39 of them, and you said the record keeping is one of those. Are you saying if tomorrow, as Scopa, if we agree that tomorrow we go to Eskom, are we going to find proper record keeping methods in Eskom? The last question, Chairperson. Tegeta was appointed in March 2015. But when you look into the big file that we have, page 363, you had a meeting as Eskom with Tegeta on the 23rd of September 2014. How do you relate? How do we marry these 2 days? Do we have a pre-meeting before you give a contract to a particular person, or what really happens?
All right. Can we respond to those 4 questions? Yes.
Honourable Chair, I'll deal with the compliance one first because that's easy. Before the current procurement processes, the current procurement procedure in Eskom has been updated to include our compliance to the triple PFA. Though when our exemption lapsed, we had to include it. So, but prior to that, we did have an Eskom supply chain and management procedure, and these are updated as the laws change. Okay.
All right, the pre-qualifications, the record keeping.
It is correct that PwC identified records keeping as one of the elements that we needed to address. And since the first report was issued and the second one, we have extensively looked at our record keeping and looked at making it more centralized. So I'd like to say that our record keeping has vastly improved based on the outcomes of the PwC report. With regards to the question on, we had a meeting with the Tegeta, I think you said in 2014. So the process that happens is that there is our engagements with Tegeta commenced in July 2013. And therefore, there are several meetings that happen with the supplier, several elements that we look at in terms of our due diligence. So the minutes that you have available are a result of various meetings that we've had with suppliers, that we have with suppliers to get to a point of a contract. So there is a pre-meeting before a contract is signed, to answer.
The pre-qualification?
May I please request clarity on the pre-qualification question?
Earlier, it was said that the pre-qualification has, unless if I'm not quoting him verbatim correctly, the pre-qualifications has always been a method that has been used by Eskom. I do not understand this pre-qualification. Do you do that to all the coal suppliers, or what is it? Can you just explain this pre-qualification so that we can apply our minds and to be, because what has been the problem, or what is in the public out there, is that they were given preference. So we're trying to understand that preference and applying our minds. But there's a pre-qualification that the CEO and the chairperson keeps on referring to. What is this pre-qualification? At what stage do you give a supplier pre-qualification? Can you take us through that process?
Yeah, it's not pre-qualification. It is awarding without a tender, which is unsolicited bid. So it's unsolicited. So what we were explaining earlier is that the rules that were designed by Eskom in 2008 allowed for Eskom to procure coal from without a competitive process from 2008 on an emergency basis. So that is what we were explaining earlier. And that is what the chairman was explaining, that in 2008 mandate allowed Eskom to procure coal for emergency purposes on an unsolicited or without going through a tender process. But what I then added on was that, but Eskom has been doing this even when it has not been emergencies. For example, in the case of cost plus mines, those mines did not go through a competitive process to gain the advantage that they have. And I also said, over the last 5 years, we've spent 75.4 billion rand on the cost plus mines that are not black owned and that did not go through competitive process. However, these are things that we are now beginning to change at Eskom. The minister has insisted that there shall be black economic empowerment and there shall be competitive processes in awarding contracts.
All right.
And we don't do cost plus mines anymore.
Okay. Yeah, there was a question on officials suspended. No, I'll go to Comrade Boy and then we'll... Officials suspended. Were they officials suspended for how long?
You remember the terrible load shedding in 2008. This is what precipitated that board resolution about unsolicited bids. We have now eliminated that because we no longer have load shedding. We shouldn't have such pressure on us. But as I said, there is now the risk of load shedding again because we are not getting authorization to buy more coal as we stockpile for winter.
All right, officials suspended. Did we have officials suspended as a result of this contract? Yeah.
Yes, there were 4 officials that were suspended as a result of the coal quality issues that were identified in July 2015. Of the 4, and there were also laboratories that were suspended as a result of the coal quality situation that we received, as well as a supplier that was suspended. Some of the suspensions have been lifted in different cases. So for the 4 employees, 2 have been lifted, the suspensions.
And the other 2?
One of them is a subject of the disciplinary process, and one of them, the employment with Eskom has terminated.
All right.
Chair, I can also add that when we did get allegations that the Tegeta coal is not up to standard, we did suspend the Tegeta contract in, I think, August 2016. And we investigated those allegations, and we had to send coal to the South African Bureau of Standards to verify if the allegations are correct. And when the coal came back from the South African Bureau of Standards, we lifted the suspension on Tegeta. So Tegeta did not get special treatment. We did suspend at some point there. It was this Braakfontein contract that was suspended.
Now let me go to Comrade.
It's getting more exciting. We will concentrate on the PwC report because we should go to page 26 and page 27 of the PwC report. In terms of the file, it's 180 and 181. Because that's the essence of everything that we talk about. My first question, if I can shoot Chairperson.
Yeah, sure.
Who was in the negotiating team? And who is the negotiating team? Because the negotiating team and its powers seems to have overrun everything that was ever legal within Eskom. The negotiation team, Baba, seems to have too much power and didn't follow all the necessary processes. I'm coming to that one. I just wanted to know who was negotiating. Because did they go to procurement? Did they go to the financial cost? Did they go to all the embodies that are supposed to have been put together when you start negotiating? But, ma'am, you know, in Parliament, you must not mislead us. Don't do that because you're doing it at a price that can become very expensive. What PricewaterhouseCoopers says and what it has advised you, and I wonder what happened. That is G. The contract appears to have been compiled hastily by copying and pasting sections from the contract. That's what PwC says. And you seem to be talking as if the contract was smooth running, was negotiated, it was quite. But PwC, when it came before us, the contract was not put together by an institution that is of integrity. This is what PwC say. It's in the page, sir. It's not me. I'm not reading from Marxist-Leninism. I'm reading from what PwC have told us.
Well, I can give you more time if you were doing that. But that you...
Let's go to what other concerned PwC have expressed, and which brings more questions about the contract. This is F. They say there was an addendum data, E of the contract, dealing with the BEE ownership undertaking is in the form of a letter from the supplier. It didn't originate from Eskom. The supplier came with a BEE letter and said, this is how we are. What type of circumstances are these? And can it then be saying, I mean, our people should be suspicious of this particular one? Because the supplier comes with a letter and says, I'm BEE compliant, this is my letter. But Eskom in itself as an institution doesn't take note of what that particular development it is. Can you take us through that? How does that happen? Let's deal with K in that particular one. There's quite a lot of issues still. Although it was reported that an updated coal procurement strategy exists, this was not provided for review, nor was there any evidence found that demonstrated that the procurement was in accordance with the approval of strategy. What happened here? This negotiation team, when it was given powers, it then just continued with ignoring your procurement processes internally. Now it brings in the discrepancies that happens within that particular process. That's why there's a concern about how Tegeta got this particular deal, because it never followed the necessary procurement processes. Because that strategy was put aside until there's a reason you could be able to motivate. But this is all what PwC have raised, and we have not yet answers to that particular one. It says, ma'am, just to help you on this thing of costing and pricing, on N, it's the report that was provided to you on page 27, Comrade Khuno. It says the relative percentages in the price escalation basket differs from the prescribed basket mandate standard. Together with qualities and price per energy unit, price adjustment are critical financial parameters in multi-year contract and justifies tight oversight and consideration. No rationale for the deviation from the standard was provided. So it means that when you're costing, ma'am, your 400 billion, you didn't follow anything that is prescribed within your own mandate. You thumbsucked it, as you have thumbsucked it again today. 4 billion, it's easy to call it, the most easiest figure. But you didn't follow the necessary processes prescribed by your own contracts. And how did you arrive at that 4 billion? And it means that the person who was getting the tender was not even worried, because your costing price and everything that was related to this costing, or whatever the cost was supposed to be, which is the taxpayers' money, ma'am. I know it's not your money, so 4 billion, it doesn't come as easy as like that. How did you arrive at all these things when you have not recognized what is within your own system? How should Parliament be able to take note of how you have handled? Because if the contract has been so clumsily organized and even your pricing systems have not been in place, how do you come at all these things called 4 billion? Where did you derive that type of a figure? And misleading us is a problem. I just wanted to forewarn you again. My last question, Chairperson.
Okay.
It's on quality assurance, ma'am. It's still it's 5.43. That's Miyamezeli's view. It's on page 27. It is evident from our findings above that coal supply was contracted prior to the receipt of some of the required evaluation documentation and requirements. The contract was signed on 10 March 2015, despite the supplier having failed pre-qualification technical requirements. For the supplier of coal, it further appears that the condition preceded of a successful combustion test was not met. This is what Pricewaterhouse is bringing to our attention, ma'am. How has this gone through your scrutiny teams? Or was the negotiation team so powerful that you could override all these things, write a wrong contract, write wrong pricing, give a total different quality, and still get the contract, and still get whatever it is, whatever other issues the CEO would want to raise in relation to Tegeta? But for us as people who hold you to account, how do you go through a contract that doesn't stand the test of time, and it does just get it easily? 4 billion thrown up but no proper procedures to be followed. How does that happen, ma'am?
Right?
In terms of one of the questions, I'm going to go through all of your concerns. In terms of the BEE requirement and the element that PwC indicated, when negotiating with the supplier, we negotiate BEE requirements for the supplier. We request that the supplier then provides us with a letter that says that they will meet the various obligations so that they can then sign off on that letter. And that is why there is a letter from the supplier saying these are the obligations that they will meet. However, they were discussed with the supplier prior, and Eskom's transformation objectives were indicated to the supplier.
Just a minute.
Ma'am, it's always good to go generous, in generality. I'm not looking for generous answers. I say to you, let's go to F and look at F at exactly what even the concerns of PwC was and what PwC is saying. It's F, ma'am, on page 26. Talk about Tegeta. Don't give me a general running of Eskom. I'm not even there. I don't want to run it. Give me the answer in terms of what the concerns of the PwC and how did you tackle those particular concerns. If I finish the sentence, it says, undertaking is considered a more appropriate way in order to avoid misinterpretation and ambiguity. That's what your question was from PwC. What do you say, ma'am?
The finding from PwC on the letter that we received from Tegeta is indicated here. One of the things that they indicated at PwC, within PwC.
All right, okay, maybe let's do this, just a small technical thing. Ma'am, if you could use this mic. Yes. Yeah. Meaning you must actually physically move because the cameras do not see you well. Please just move. Yeah, move further. That's it. That's it. Yeah, unfortunately. All right. Yeah, use that mic and continue. It's fine.
With regards to the black economic empowerment and the finding from PwC, it is correct that the PwC, when they came through and did the assessment of the contract, they indicated to us that having the supplier write and say that these are the undertakings that they will do, it is preferably that it is then written into the contract, then it is signed on the contract. So we had negotiated with the supplier, and in the negotiations we had indicated to the supplier that they should write to us and indicate their black economic empowerment initiatives. PwC highlighted that and said those elements that you want to warrant for the suppliers, whether it's a black economic empowerment or anything, should be written into the contract at the beginning. As a result of those findings, we then amended our contracts so that we can then include supply.
Yeah, I think, ma'am, all you needed to say
Yes,
is I
correct.
agree with the
Yes.
findings,
Sorry.
and we have made the necessary adjustments, because all these other explanations do not change the finding, and they don't challenge the finding.
We agree with the finding on the letter.
But I must caution, that guidance from the chairperson is not original. I want to hear the views of Eskom after PwC has highlighted this. That's a shortcut to nowhere. I just want to caution you about that. I've asked the question, not him, but it's a shortcut to nowhere. Because I want to know that how does originally in your own contract, how did you allow such a situation where PwC becomes the one that makes the observation and then you yourselves only respond to PwC, but it seems as if you have never thought about black empowerment. It's not in your contract. It's all I wanted to, that's my first interest. And why must suppliers wait and be told by you, please bring the certificate? Yes. After you have already made your point. I mean, I thought that the laws of this country are quite obvious. Unless Sol is not doing his job properly, to say, how do you write up a tender? And these are the expectations in the tender. But this one seems to have got a nice preferential treatment. That's where we're trying to find out that, was it preferential for them to have been able to supply that certificate? Or are they also African? Maybe we are missing something there.
Perhaps, Chair, if I can assist here, there were a lot of things that were wrong that were identified in the PwC report and in other internal audit reports. And I think the initial question of Mr. Boy of who was involved in this may become relevant, because then maybe what we should have reported on is, so the people that did all of these things that resulted in these findings, were there any disciplinary action against them? The people that did not follow the correct procedures, that did not that resulted in 48 PwC findings. What was the consequence management? And I must confess that we have not looked very closely at consequence management, largely because quite a number of them, I believe, may not be at Eskom, or we can go and follow up and see if there is any consequence management. But we have accepted the findings of PwC, and what we have done was to be constructive and fix everything and make sure that it does not happen again in the organization. Thank you.
With due respect, sir, you see, we're not talking to ourselves. The public has been told quite a lot about this particular deal, and we're highlighting the problems with this particular one. The shortcut that we are suggesting says, let's put dust to everything and go to consequences. The question is, what type of human beings or people or professionals would write such a poor contract? And that poor contract cost the taxpayers about 4 billion. And then you expect us to just, put cement over it and forget about it. It can't be like that. It has to be explained so that even on the side of Scopa, it becomes important. We always tell you that we are interested in the detail. All these other things we are not interested. The detail is what is being provided. And that's where we want the answer. So that we can see if there are weaknesses within Eskom and how do we address them, sir, you see. But if we plaster over it in our approach, we'll end up not knowing what we should be writing as a resolution. Should we improve Eskom's capabilities or not, you see. But if you want a shortcut, it's really going to benefit you alone. Myself and the public are not going to know what has been going on in Eskom. And we are interested to know if there was a negotiating team that did the procurement processes, how does that happen outside your own scope of how you explain yourself? These are details that are quite necessary. And that's why I'm saying we'd rather take each other and get an explanation than the shortcut and plastering that would want to be suggested. Consequences we'll discuss later, sir. I'm still on the one on the BEE. What happened here?
I'm going to attempt to answer the BEE question. In terms of the BEE question, and if I incorrectly answer, you'll advise. Then the negotiations with the supplier were to ensure that they meet Eskom's requirements for black economic empowerment, and quite specifically on the in the coal space, we aim to ensure that our suppliers are 51% black-owned. So we negotiated with the supplier in terms of what steps are they going to take to get them to 50 plus 1 share is what was negotiated. And as a result of that, the supplier was then requested to provide a letter with those steps to get them to a 50 plus 1 black ownership. The finding from PwC indicated that requesting a letter from suppliers, from their supplier, we should actually put it into our coal supply agreements and not have a letter, which is the finding that is there. And we agree with that finding that we need to include it in our coal contracts going forward. Have I answered the question?
You can proceed, ma'am.
To the other questions.
There are quite a lot.
There was K, there was N, and the question of the team, if you recall, who were in the negotiating team.
In terms of the other question came in terms of the updated coal supply strategy. So a coal supply strategy was tabled at our board. I apologize for not being able to give you the exact date. And at the time that the PwC team came through, they had requested the full extracts of the report, and we had provided with them the presentation that was given. So that is the coal supply strategy, and it talks to the overall transformational objectives of the supply of coal to Eskom. With regards to the negotiations...
Just there, ma'am.
Sorry?
You know, throughout your reporting, PwC complains about that you seem not to be knowing the dates, or you seem to be confusing dates. What happens within yourself and the board? Is that the dates are not, whoever writes minutes of your minutes or your work, doesn't he have knowledge of dates? Or is it just normal with you that you don't want to recognize dates? Because dates are very crucial because they tell us at which stage did you start these processes. As Honorable Huno have shown, even though your prerequisite, also the dates were upside down. What is the problem with this dating? Because PwC talks a lot about the wrongness of your dates. What is the problem? If you can just give me a sense that you technically think dates are not important, or what is the problem?
We agree with the findings of PwC on our records management, and that stems to the element of the dates. So PwC did come through and acknowledge that records management within the section needs to be vastly improved, because in obtaining information, it is obtained in different areas. And that is the result of why a lot of the findings come out in terms of with the dates of certain events because of our records management.
All right, let's talk to the other issues. We almost at midday.
Give us the G. Give us the G.
No, it's K and N. I don't.
Mr.
Yeah, no. Look, and please, comrades, I want them to respond as concisely as they have been doing all along. Otherwise, it will be 1 o'clock before we even finish PwC and go to the packed questions. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to talk to the matter of item G. There is a standard template with standard terms and conditions of a coal supply agreement in place. What appears from here is that the templates weren't managed properly, so people could copy and paste and create a new contract. And there are certain sections in, as in all templates, that are supplier specific. That is how it was dealt with then. We've tightened up the system in terms of who has control over the original terms and conditions, and where we have version changes, we can document them now. So that's how we responded to this.
All right.
Just You see, ma'am, it was copying and pasting of a contract that is costing us 4 billion. I mean, ma'am, you can't be talking like that to us and says, these are small peanuts, we just put them. It's 4 billion of taxpayers' money. And you put together a contract of a deal now called Tegeta that is in the public space that creates a lot of controversies. It meant that from the people who wrote the contract on day one, they are the ones who must take full responsibility, ma'am. You can't come and tell us, no, we have improved. The improvement happened after PwC has brought it to your attention that the thing that put your relationship together, called the contract, was copying and pasting. That's what it says. How do you do that? How do you come and go to the next partner? So it means that the capacities of Eskom are a little bit of a problem. You can't copy and paste, ma'am, and give it to the next partner. And the next thing you expect Parliament or you expect our public to say, that 4 billion, let's accept that the people that we have employed don't know what they were doing. Is that what is happening there in Eskom?
You will note that one of the PwC recommendations...
Let the board answer, ma'am, because you have not given me a proper...
All right, okay, let's, yeah.
I'll try and be very brief. Eskom went through a terrible time. We all know that, it's history. That's why we appealed to the minister to bring us a tested CEO. And she went to Transnet and said, Brian Molife, come to Eskom, because the problems are serious. A national catastrophe was about to happen in terms of a national blackout. When a country gets into a blackout, it takes more than 36 hours to get out, because then we have got the black start points in the grid and in the power supply, which take time to build up to the right frequency in terms of the current. Once the current drops below 49 frequency, megahertz, you are in serious trouble. So we appealed, and Brian came to Eskom, and he sat down from 5 in the morning to 10 at night with these top engineers, and they sorted out the problems. Right. What we are talking about is a period where there was real chaos and disorder at Eskom. Okay. This is why, as a board, we've valued him, because at least we have been able to resolve that.
Okay, all right. I want to give the acting chair, because he has not spoken, please, on a point of order.
I've got a concern. Honorable has asked a very pointed question about record management and how it is that you arrived at a situation that you had a hastily done contract. Now, whilst the chairperson of the board may value Mr. Mlefe, that's not the question. He's speaking about blackouts. Here we're speaking about the operations and the management of that. So I'm looking at a situation, Chair, whether it's up to you, but I believe there's merit to the question. How it happened that you have got a contract, quote unquote, with loopholes. So I really think we are beginning to now stand on shifting ground in terms of the responses that we are getting. And I think it's becoming very unfortunate, because now we start pleading cases of employees.
Kusahlafuna le question yakhe, le intervention yakhe. Yeah, please, and very briefly, because we have to move forward.
The problem is that this report is too big, Chairperson. We understand that you are getting an opportunity to talk in Parliament, but the problem with the relationship with us, Eskom and Tegeta, are in a public space, and the contract is at the heart of everything, of how they have formulated the relationship. Now it's been copying and pasting. That's why I'm interested. Now the chair of the board says there was a catastrophe, a disaster. But it doesn't help me to say that, because you see, at the end of the day, there would have been ministers, people in the executive. You run to them and explain your circumstances. But you can't be saying to me professionally, people couldn't write a contract. And 4 billion from what she's now saying, and a contract that is ongoing for the coming 10 years. Those few issues, you could easily write them and be able to give them the money. But PwC and what the CEO have said is that these issues were raised and they've been doing that from 48 to 39, all these things were being done. I thought that she's informed. She'll just easily say, no, when the problem came, here's what we did. But even Brian talks about consequences. The heart of the problem is the contract, Chairperson. And I'm interested in that contract. It was copied and pasted. Maybe they see Kodi, they put in Kodi, they see Nyami, they put. How can you write a contract of that nature at such a high cost, at such an institution of importance in our life?
Well, I think the copying and pasting relates to all the other 3 contracts, not just the Tegeta one. So all the 4 contracts that were checked by PwC, they were all having cut and paste, which then raises the question about how contracts were done. But what the chairperson said, and you know, it's a pity because I'm sitting this side. When you answer, don't put a lot of spices because the point you're making gets lost. He said, before they went for Mr. Molefe, there was chaos at Eskom, which would explain some of these things that were happening. But when you add other things, then that point get lost. To say, yes, I agree, Eskom had a problem. Things were not being done right. And stop there. So that the issues are... And the issue of document management, well, you raised it. He has raised it. I think Comrade Vincent, was it you or some, raised it. So we had document management as a problem. Then what? Then what? You know. So I'm just saying it is important that when we raise questions, they must not just lead to a gridlock. There was a problem with document management. Then sit in. Because it was there, it was a problem. And it led to what is in front of us now. So I think for me, comrades, I would say let's note it. When I say note it, I mean it means that when we do our resolution, it is an area around which we need to express ourselves quite substantively. I think for me, that's all we can do. Because we've picked it up as a problem area. Right? All right. Can I give Uche a committee? No. Let me, because she has not said a word.
Thanks, Chairperson.
Yes, comrade.
And you, Chairperson, I beg your indulgence because the report that you are speaking about and the file that Comrade Nyami is speaking about, we were not exposed to it. We did not get that information. But Chair, in just the last issue that has been raised, I would wish to understand when Eskom said up to the response to the National Treasury that their supply management chain, they paid the money according to their supply management chain or agreement. I just wanted to check, when was the supply management agreement drafted? Was it meant for that, for when a supply management agreement is done, it's not done for everybody. It's done purposely for the purpose of that of that time and that contractor or contract. I would want them to just to give us a clarity on that. Maybe I'm repeating what the other comrades have said, but I have not actually understand how their supply management agreement works, because it looks like it works according to the situation of that time. And also, Chair, I'm worried. I just want to raise a concern that I'm worried about what the Eskom board chairperson has said when he said when a contractor has been given a certificate to do something, therefore they as Eskom do not have to monitor. In the case of the water or water supply or water management or water works, whatever. When he says the certificate was given to the contractor, therefore they, as Eskom, take it that it is good. Therefore, if the certificate is given, they don't have to monitor it. So the conditions of the water, even if they change, they wouldn't know as Eskom. They would only know it in 2016 if it is done in 2013. If they would only know it in 2016 when when the monitoring is done by an outside body. I'm very much concerned because it means how many. To me, it comes to a question that says how many contractors have done wrong things in the process of them getting the contract with Eskom, and you did not monitor, and only you find it out at a later stage, Chairperson, that it's in between the correct contract that they have given or the correct certificate that they have given and the later stage. There is something that happened in between that makes Eskom inefficient and ineffective because of that, and it makes it raises questions from other sources that are monitoring the work that is being done in Eskom. And also, what I would want to know, Chair, I said you must please. I beg for your indulgence because I just wanted to check if National Treasury gives Eskom money. National Treasury has its own conditions. If the conditions of National Treasury or the conditions, yes, the conditions of National Treasury are not the conditions that Eskom has, why would Eskom ask money from National Treasury if they're not going to work according to what the National Treasury is envisaging on the money that they would say? Because if National Treasury said the expenditure that was given was made, or the payments that was made to Tegeta according to their processes was wasteful and fruitless, and then Eskom respond by saying that was not fruitless and that was not a wasteful expenditure. It was what is correct that should be done according to Eskom and not according to the National Treasury, and yet the money comes from the National Treasury. Thanks, Chairperson. That's all that I would wanted to know.
No, hang on. Yes, comrade.
Thanks, Chairperson. Chair, with special regard to the Tegeta issue here, what I found, Mr. Chairperson, is the fact that there is no cosmetic massage of the original case here. If I listen well, the findings of the PwC report is not rejected or denied by either the management and the board of Eskom. Because there is something very sinister here, Chair. The issue that relates to the PwC report was never considered by the board, but the recommendations or the findings were actually effected. And then I want to check also, Chair, on the matter that relates to the advance that was made or processed for the benefit of Tegeta. Can I therefore get a response on the part of the board or the CEO? Because that is totally against the Treasury regulations. Then I think, Chair, here, the issue of the automatic inflation management as it relates to the manner in which contracts were made, it's an issue that was actually asked here before, to say, were there any projections that were made as it relates to the amount of contracts contracts at that particular time up to the end of the contractual term. So the normal intellectual panic of the public in understanding as to what is happening at Eskom, we must also give a benefit of doubt to the board when it says this is what has happened and it is to the detriment of the taxpayers' management of coffers by Eskom, and therefore an intervention was seen to be Mr. Molife. I don't think there is something wrong in them indicating that, because I was going to ask a fundamental question that says, what have you done as the board in relation to respond to these issues? Because this Tegeta issue has an element of covering a lot of money of the taxpayer that has been lost. If it has been lost, how do we recover that? Ngosihla.
Okay, I want us to do this, comrades. I'm trying to check if there are any follow-up questions. And requesting that each comrade, if you have a follow-up, let at least it be one question, because we have all dealt with the substantive issues. And I would give those who have follow-up questions, all of them, and then Eskom can respond at once. And once they've done that, then let's go back to that question of is it optimum coal supply with the advance, as well as the issue of the 73% suppliers vis-a-vis the 27, whatever, so that we, yeah, no, I'm coming this way. Okay. You also want a procedural point? Procedure. Okay, no, it's fine. Let me give Comrade Boy and then I'll come to you.
Chairperson, at the end of the day, as you give them an opportunity to go haywire, we need to write a report about what was submitted to us. So I just want you to be aware that while there's some vagueness in how they've answered questions, I'll abandon them, but at the end of the day, there's a reality that this report wouldn't be able to be agreed upon by Scopa, and it will leave a biggest gap of how the Tegeta matter was handled. Because what they are entering into now is more speculative problems, but or politics. I'm just saying, it's a caution I'm giving back to Eskom that at the end of the day, we want answers so that we could be able to write a report for the sake of treasury.
All right.
And as long as that doesn't happen, this report will stay in abeyance for a very long time, and it will continue to drain the energies of Eskom. But they would have to come back and report quite regularly to Scopa about how did they do all these things.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. No, that's fine. The follow-ups are about PwC. Yes, Honorable Mazul.
Chairperson, thank you, and I beg your indulgence. Chair, in the parking of my question, there are two issues that have now been raised that deal very much with my follow-up question. So I wonder, before you allow the board to answer my park question, if you will allow me literally a 20-second grace period to just elaborate on one of the questions, given what's been discussed here.
No, that's fine.
I thank you, Chair.
Sure. Ross? And then Hlengwa. All right. Briefly and pointedly, comrades.
Yes, Chairperson, my follow-up question is to the National Treasury with regards to the status of the audit reports. We saw the 2016...
Status of the?
To the National Treasury, to Solly.
Yeah, status of?
Of the audit reports, the financial year-end reporting. You see the 2016 financial statements for Eskom indicated that contract management and supply chain processes were red flagged. And that's where it is in 2016. Now, my question to National Treasury is whether they engage with the external auditors in determining the irregular expenditure with regards perhaps to the Tegeta contracts. And if National Treasury can give us an indication.
All right.
What the outcomes were.
Okay. Right, Hlengwa?
No, thanks, Chair. Chair, on page 241, the findings by PwC on the issues of the validity of the contract. The observation is that the combustion tests done to date on the AC coal supply are inconclusive, and it is unclear if the condition precedent of clause 10.2.1 of the contract has been met. Clause 10.3 of the agreement specifically stipulates that if 10.2.1 is not fulfilled or waived, the contract shall never become effective. And then a set of recommendations, 2 recommendations accompany that observation. Now, Chair, why I raise that is because on page 337, the CEO writing to Treasury, the first page of that letter, of a letter dated the 30th of August 2016, says, page 337, Chair.
Okay.
The paragraph 1, 2, 3, I'll start reading from the second sentence. At the outset, it must be recorded that Eskom has managed and continues to manage its risk relating to coal supply from Tegeta and other suppliers prudently and within the framework provided for in terms of the CSAs. Eskom shall take necessary steps against suppliers who breach the terms of such CSAs and expose Eskom to risk. That's the CEO to Treasury. Now, I quote that paragraph in relation to what I've just raised now, because then the effectiveness of that contract, I've just lost my page now. I think it's page 376, Chair. So, Chair, I'm just wanting to then gauge in the confidence in which the CEO writes to Treasury. Has that been done? Because if the combustion tests are inconclusive, I would imagine that's risk. Chair, let me just finally, I'd asked two the last time. I just want to make this comment, Chair. I'm sorry. Tegeta had been in operation from 2010, or had been operating without a license from 2010, water license. Now, 2 years of discussions took place with Tegeta of some sort or the other. I was listening now to the issues of the BEE status. Why do I get a sense, Chair, that Tegeta was aided and abetted and raised like a baby to a point that it complied in one way or the other? And so I think that's why what Honorable Browter wanted is important, the dossier of the other potential contractors, to ascertain whether as much effort by Eskom was put into them to make sure that they complied. So the water license is not there, so right, we'll have to wait for such a time that you've got a water license and ensure you comply. And I think that's the nub of the issue, Chair. Why was such special focus given to Tegeta to ensure they arrive at a position where we could, in one way or the other, give them this 4 billion rands contract, flawed contract, and the others? So I think, Chair, until we have zoomed into that particular aspect, the unsolicited bid on its own was part of an executive collusion with Eskom and Tegeta. And I wait for somebody to prove me wrong, because I am convinced Utu Tegeta received a special assistance from Eskom at the expense of other people, flouting PFMA and other regulations. And that's the nub of the question.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Meant.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, if we go to page 88 of the PwC report, which is 242 of the file, on the focus area is contract management and the observation. The observation, it says neither the coal sourcing manager, contracting process, and the coal supply unit manager implementation and operation management were clear on key outstanding elements of the contract, like the quality testing and confirmation, potential risks identified by the bulk sample test results, and the financial finalization of the outstanding CQMP. So with everything not done, the contract was allowed to go ahead. That's what this observation is saying. Firstly, when we started, the CEO indicated that they commissioned PwC. Why? They knew that they are doing wrong things, and they wanted to fill up the gaps. But what they did not calculate is that the PwC report will have to be public. I cannot sit here and believe that you source a service provider and you don't know what you want from a service provider. And you start a process without knowing and initiate an outsider to come and tell you what you should have done, which you have already done. And then later, you expect us to believe that you went to someone else to tell you what you should have done, which you already have done. The mistake that Eskom did was to go to PwC, an uncalculated move. And therefore, PwC tells them the honesty that what you have done is wrong, you are not supposed to do it. These people do not qualify to have a tender. But because they have signed it, they are not reversing it. The only thing that Eskom has to do, based on these findings, they have to reverse the contract. They have to cancel it altogether because it has no grounds to be authorized. It's not qualifying at any standard. I don't want to go and talk about the money, because if ever we are going to talk about the money, the CEO earlier on said they asked PwC to assist them, but then PwC went on to areas that they were not supposed to look into, which they look like they were confused people. Then my question will be, why do you spend money on other people to assist you when you know for sure that they are confused people? When they give you what you ask them to do, you then become to say, but you are confused. You are not doing what is it that you expected PwC to tell you? They are telling you the contract is wrong. Therefore, it has to be scrapped. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Who is next? Comrade Vincent.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I think the point that I want to make, I want to address to the Minister as the executive authority, to the DG as the accounting authority, and to the Chair. Scopa is not going to call you out of malicious compliance. We are informed by the PFMA. If this contract, after what you've heard, is adjudicated by the Auditor General as being irregular, fruitless, or wasteful expenditure, you would have flouted the PFMA, because yours is to prevent. Yours is to prevent fruitless, wasteful, and whatever expenditure. So, Chair, because I heard Honorable Boy saying that we will do a report later on. That's after the fact. I think we have a responsibility to safeguard taxpayers' money proactively. So the point that I'm making, Chair, is that whilst notwithstanding what we're going to do later, but I do think that the Chair of the Board, the accounting officer, and the Minister must be aware that there will be consequences if all of us sitting here knowingly flout the PFMA. Now, I don't know how we're going to do it, because there's going to have to be whatever verification, but I think they should just be aware right up front that, and I'm saying that, Chair, because somebody was saying this contract goes for 10 years. We 1/3 of those 10 years, 3 of the 10 years, that we've already, it's water under the bridge. Are we going to wait for another 3 years so that it's 50% of the contract under the bridge till we realize that it was in fact fruitless, wasteful, unauthorized, or whatever the case might be? I just think that the right thing to do is for us to proactively start thinking about and the board, by the way. And the board, by the way. The Eskom board will be all implicated in this thing because you are the accounting authority. So my suggestion is go and think about what is happening here and find a solution. Thanks, Chair.
Professor, do you have your hand up? No. All right. Chilwane? No. No. All right. Kuno? I thought you'd come last, isn't it? Please continue.
Chairperson, I thought it's only women who change their names, not men. Chair, that was on the latter note. It will be a serious problem if the lady who was answering questions earlier on, Ayanda, it will be a problem when you answer a question to satisfy an individual. Like I said earlier on, we really look into the facts as Scopa, because at the end of the day, we need to write a report that will be debated in the House and get resolutions that will help South Africa, us all as South Africans. That's the first thing. Chairperson, the reason why I asked about, I think I should have done the way Comrade Chulan had asked questions, to wait for the response and make a follow-up on the disciplinary action, not taking you back, because I don't think we're going to help each other if we do that. You know, when you look into the file, I think you'll do that later on 349, the water use license, that according to Section 15 of the National Water Act, it is an offense to use water without the required water use license. Any person convicted of this offense is liable on first conviction or a fine or imprisonment for up to 5 years or both. I'm saying this, Chairperson, to show that if we do not take consequence management seriously, we're going to have problems. And this is about time, Minister, that these laws are made to are applied. People need to know if I flow in government regulations, I will be imprisoned. And I think we should be exemplary, Chairperson Scopa, and make sure that we recommend this and make sure that National Assembly takes us seriously, and whoever has flawed any of our regulations should be imprisoned. But I think also, Chairperson, if we had given, I think if we had given Ntate Ngubane a chance to explain to us the extent of the problems, maybe we would understand it better. Because, you know, the way he's answering, he makes us ask more questions. You know, sitting here,
I want you to round off because this follow-up round.
Yes, Chairperson. When the CEO says cost plus mines have been cancelled or they have come to an end, and there were contracts, you know, we're talking about Anglo, New Denmark, Tegeta, yes, when we look into your slide 5, if we've spent so much money as the government, you know, you have spent so much money with this cost plus mines, And you are giving this, obviously you said you are not there, you're at Zaro and
I
all
want
that.
you to round off.
Yes, I'm rounding it, Chairperson. If you can stop interrupting me, because I'll forget the English part.
Just a minute. This is not your first input.
Yes.
Because we're rounding up, I thought you were going to be pointed.
Okay.
Yes.
My point is that we need to have those contracts, Chairperson, that have been signed between Eskom and these different companies on slide 5. On slide 5, your Exaros. And when you say their contracts are coming to an end in December, we need to see that when were these contracts being given. And when the chairperson of the board says that we had problem of load shedding, but so much money was given to companies that did not supply coal or whatever that when they were supposed to have supplied, and we had a problem of load shedding. I mean, this is where the extent where you find that people are just at work and they are not committed to be doing what they are supposed to be doing. And I think it's about time that we take seriously, all these contractors or companies that we have given so much money, but they made us go through load shedding. What was the problem, and what did you do to make sure that you penalize them and make sure whatever that they've done with the government, it's not repeated? Because I think at some stage it would be repeated.
Right. Okay, Comrade Kikane. It's you now. Now, ube brief.
No, thanks, Chair. I think my colleagues have clearly, particularly Vincent, amplified that is the role of this committee. This is not a brainwave, but whilst discussing it, it's something that came up, that is whilst we're busy discussing, that I need to check with Eskom as to what is the value of the PWV contract. PWC, sorry. The one that we are debating here, because you had 2 instructions from them. You received one that is response, and you further instructed them, that is to do another review. At what value? The other issue is Eskom in its presentation. Unfortunately, they did not do that presentation, but it was handed out. They are saying to us they are the largest buyers of coal in the continent, and they spend something like 50 billion per annum. And what I want to get from Eskom is the breakdown of that money, because it is a lot of money. The other issue is the implications. What implications does that have to the ratepayer? There is an issue also, I'm saying to the ratepayers, because there is the follow-up slide that is from the presentation. It talks about the increase for ±5 years. As to, are we making savings, that is, as South Africa? Because if you are spending ±50 billion, that is per annum, obviously we need to benefit, that is as ratepayers or maybe as customers. And the other issue that I want to check is on the increase, the 5-year increase that we are referring to. If you can quantify that in rands and cents as to how much loss have we incurred, that is as a country, in terms of the 5 years that we are referring to here. Right. The last issue would be for you to explain to us, because a number of colleagues raised the same issue. What do you mean by this plus, the cost plus mine? That you initially said it was discontinued, that is at the intervention of the minister. What is exactly that? Because from what I've heard is that we have lost a lot of money, that is as a country. And I think you need to explain to us as to the concept, how much have we lost, if it is possible, and why was it discontinued? Okay. Because you indicated that is earlier on that it was just that is discontinued at the intervention of the minister. The reasons why.
All right.
I think those are the last
All
questions.
right. Lastly, Mazoli, your 20 seconds, and I'm counting.
Chairperson, absolutely. Thank you. Chair, I agree 100% with what Honourable Nyami Boy said earlier, and I don't think that his questions were answered sufficiently. And Chair, if you'll let me, I'd just like to quote something. In light of the extensive financial analysis conducted, it appears that the sole purpose of awarding contracts to Tegeta to supply the Ono power station were made solely for the purpose of funding Tegeta and enabling Tegeta to purchase shares in OCH, which is Optimum Coal Holdings. Chairperson, between August 2015 and April 2016, the Public Protector found that Mr. Brian Molefe had had extensive dealings with the Gupta family. Can we have a clear indication here if at the April 2016 board meeting was a direct instruction given by the Gupta family to Mr. Molefe to make the 600 million rand transfer to Tegeta in order for them to purchase the mine? And Chair, while we've been sitting here, news has just broken that Minister Brown has very bravely instituted a SIU investigation into Eskom. So I put it to the board, if everything's so okay with the board, why is the Minister now forced to refer the Tegeta deal for an SIU investigation?
Okay. All right. All right. The minister is supposed to be at the interministerial committee on Eskom at 1 o'clock. I would want to allow her to briefly say a few words before she leaves, and then the leadership of Eskom will then respond to all the questions that have been raised.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I'm very sorry about this, but it is a meeting that's very difficult to get 4 ministers into a room for 1 hour. Let me just say, the issue of coal or raw material generally in this country is a very important issue. Coal in particular, as a procurement, coal procurement is, I mean, if we just have to take our history, it's where, you know, the pre-1994, that's how the economy was built. And so we've really got to get to the bottom of the coal procurement across the board. Now, Tegeta is part of across the board, as far as I'm concerned. So I have said it before, and I've said it in my budget speech. I am implementing a SIU investigation to look at all the reports, including the one you have dealt with. Since 2007, there are 7 reports. There are a number of recommendations. Many of those recommendations have been fulfilled, but does it change the systemic way Eskom does business? Does it change the procurement processes across the board for everyone? When we speak about coal cost plus mines, those are mines that Eskom, it's a sort of 20, 30, 40-year contracted mines that has been given to people 20, 30, 40 years ago. And those mines, the land, the machinery, the labor, everything is paid for by Eskom, and these people just pay a management fee to Eskom. So we have to relook everything. We have to relook the fact that 2008 there was load shedding. They had to get quick, coal, and that then became a process that they used over a long, long period. Remember, the 2014 load shedding, they purchased diesel, which cost us R1 billion a month. So we've got to find a better course for Eskom. It is one of the 4 largest utilities in the world. It supplies 95% of the electricity to South Africans at this time. It is an economic driver, and however we look at it, we've got to fix it. So that's what and Tegeta will be part of that process. It's an imminent investigation. It will be completely independent in that it's within the SIU, and it will be overseen in terms of what the recommendations are that come out of that by, I hope, a retired judge. And those recommendations will either go to the MPA or back into the company so that the company is able to fix itself. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Comrade Minister. Can I now hand over to the Eskom leadership to respond to the various issues that were raised? I know we are pressed for time. Yeah, but the initial response must come from Eskom. The issue of National Treasury or other members, those are subsidiary. The bulk of the questions are directed to Eskom. I'm handing over to the chair. You see, if you want to talk, then you must talk to your chairperson so he allows you to make additions. But you can't, I can't give you to speak independent of the chairperson. Yes, Chair.
Chairperson, I'm sorry to interrupt on a point of order. My question was directed to National Treasury. Is it possible that
True,
I can
yeah,
also?
no,
Thank
they
you.
will, they will, they will.
Sorry. Thank you, Chairperson of Scopa and Chairperson of Public Enterprises. First of all, we've got our internal auditor here. He's the one who initiated the PwC investigation because he did not have enough capacity for this work. So it was a totally self-reflective, self-correcting exercise that he engaged in. The issue of water use, you know, it's not just at the end of a year or at the end of 6 months. Inspectors from DMR, from water, come to these mines and into Eskom plants very often, very regularly. They have the expertise to judge whether people are doing the right things or not. Eskom engineers may be engineers, but they are not experts on water. So we do rely on what they find. And if a person is license is suspended, that is it. We will not continue with the operation. Payment of coal. Prepayments are happening all the time. The most recent one, as far as I remember, was to Exaro of 1.8 billion rand. You know, it's happening. I mean, it happens to Cost Plus mines because Eskom needs the coal. So if you don't pay upfront, you won't get the coal. In the case of Tegeta, we got guarantees. They pledged or ceded their shares in their mining operations to Eskom. That was the condition for the prepayment. Our internal auditor here certified that the coal that has been supplied up to now equals the prepayment that was made. So it cannot be a loan. We bought coal and we got the coal. And we had the security of guarantees in terms of their shares. Cost Plus mines were started during the National Party era. They were given 40-year, 50-year contracts where Eskom, you'd sink the shaft, would buy the equipment, and you make all sorts of improvements that are required, and at the end, pay for the coal. That is the situation that's been obtaining an inheritance from the past. Now, in terms of combustion tests, I've been to our Research and Testing and Development Institute. They do combustion tests all the time. Because one seam of coal is never the same as another seam of coal. And if that coal did not test properly, it is known as reject coal, and Eskom does not pay for it. It is the supplier who has got then the responsibility to get rid of that coal at their cost. We only pay for contract coal. Contract coal will fit the stipulations of the coal supply agreement, and that's what we pay for. These tests are not once off. They are going on all the time. We have an institution which does research and testing, and they are busy all the time. And when there was controversy, Then the CEO took the samples to the South African Bureau of Standards, and they certified that this particular seam was correct, and then we went on with the work. You know, when we were hitting the winter season, we discovered that we will need 2 million tons of coal to avoid load shedding. Several suppliers were approached. The time was short because at that time Optimum had stopped supplying us with coal, if you'll remember. Henrina was totally out of coal. So it was a question of time, quantity, and quality. Those were the pressures that were on Eskom at that time. We had to beat that deadline. And that's why this whole thing with Tegeta, prepayments, and so on came about. Of all these who applied, were approached to supply extra coal, only Tegeta and Simbiti had enough resources to make the supply possible. We had to take that. Otherwise, we would have been in serious, serious trouble. The value of the PwC report, I think the CEO can deal with that. What was the value for the taxpayer out of this? I think the report speaks for itself. It's a self-corrective report. We knew there were problems. They pointed out the problems to us, and therefore we're implementing the recommendations. And of course, I have said openly and to Parliament, bring in the investigation. We will love it. We will love it. We want to clear our names. We don't want to be so tarnished as we are. Bring in the investigations. I'm very happy the ministers ordered the SIU to come in. Let them come in. Let them pick up whatever is criminal or etc. As far as I'm concerned, there is nothing criminal that we have done. But I would like to give over to my colleagues.
I think the CFO will just talk about the cost of the contract.
Molefe, do you have the value?
Can I?
Chief Internal
Thank you,
Auditor
Chair.
will talk about that.
My name is Molefe Nkhawe, Chief Internal Auditor. I wanted to see if you can just say something also in addition to just giving the value. Because maybe it's important for the House to understand the reason we instituted the audit and not an investigation. This was not an investigation, it was an audit. What we wanted to do was to self-correct after years where this function of coal that the minister actually referred to, because of the nature of coal, there was a time when that previous board and management allowed it to have their own procurement almost outside Eskom. So they had their own procurement process that they were following. And you may find that probably out of the need to perform, they may have, these things that we are seeing may have come out of that. So when we went in, we realized that we needed not only to look at what is happening then. That's why we called PwC to say, help us not only to see whether we comply with our own policies, but also we use the word blueprint, give us what will be the world class. So that was the reason this thing was commissioned. It was not necessarily only to do the investigation. You'll realize that there were 4 mines that were chosen. 2 of them were for unsolicited process, and the other 2 were for solicited process, so that we can have a proper understanding whether which one of these works. But there were findings in all those 2 processes. And what the CFO did, he actually asked us to focus on making sure that we assist management to address those things. We almost took one of our senior managers to be almost in PD, which is in the coal space, to make sure all those things are processed. Once we are happy that, according to internal audit, they have been addressed, we call PwC again to come and do a follow-up. And this is, I think this is important to say. So all the issues that were said, we're not going to deny that documentation was an issue then. It was an issue, then we came back and make sure that management put processes in place to make it. But let me deal with this other matter, that when triple PFA started, Eskom was excluded, particularly coal. Number 2, coal, after that we asked for another 1 year exemption, which was given by Treasury. So for that reason, in that space of coal, because of the need to perform, there was a need to say, let them have their own procurement process. But most of the people who were at the heads of that, Ayanda was not the head at the time. Most of the people, they are gone. Once we came in, we started doing this investigation. Majority of them are no longer there who were the heads of that. So even if we try to do consequence management, you'll see that the names of the people are no longer in Eskom. So that is important maybe to take that into account when we analyze what had happened. And the focus was to make sure that these things that happened before, they don't happen again. And I just want to appeal to the chair to realize that Eskom did what it could to make sure that we address these matters, that it will never happen again. And I must say, if you look at the 4 mines, the issues were not only in one mine that we are all talking about and understand the profile, but they were not only on that 4 mines. They were almost all across. And we took the steps to address and arrest those. If I come to the issue of the cost that we had, the initial tender was 750, but I don't know whether we had some extra cost that we may have paid because they came back again and did some work. But the initial one, that one I have. So maybe before the time I'll give you the right figure of what had happened. But I just want to make, what I wanted to emphasize was this was an audit, it was not an investigation, and it was meant for Eskom to self-correct. And any finding that is in there is not denied. Okay. But all that we can say is that up to now, we did what we could to make sure that these things don't happen again.
Just to forward you, that's not yet relevant, sir.
Okay, no.
We wanted answers to the questions, not what you are repeating.
Okay,
it's not relevant.
All right, okay, no. DG, you wanted to make an input?
Well, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I think I'm making this input as a response to the comment by Honorable Smith around issues of oversight by the department. I think for the record, it's important that we understand that our understanding that of this report that is discussed, that it is not a PwC report. This is an Eskom report, and Eskom had commissioned PwC to do an audit internally as a base report to inform the board that had just been appointed, for the board to have a fair understanding of the challenges facing the organization at the time. And out of that, they put an implementation plan as corrective measures so that they are able to run the organization properly. I'm saying from the department, that is our understanding of this report and how it was commissioned. Hence, in our context, what we've been...
No. What is the point of order?
DG, can you guide us properly? We don't ask for reports in the streets. Treasury reported that this thing is happening. It's been on for a year. Now, do you want to say that us as parliamentarians, we just wake up in the morning and thumb sacks and look for reports in the streets? Don't play with us, DG.
No.
Don't start on the wrong path.
No.
Because you are going to fight with us. Because this report, for it to be in front of Scopa, comes from the complaints of Treasury. It's not us who went around.
All right.
If you are addressing us, you are addressing the wrong people here. We deal with what is in front of us. It's what the Auditor General and the Treasury is asking us, that you departments are not able to respond.
Okay.
And this is where we are. Let's not be made as if we don't know what we are doing. I respect what they are saying, Chairperson. But DG, don't treat us like children. We know what we are doing here. Okay. We know where we are coming from.
Okay.
But if you want to clash with us, we're quite ready.
All right. Okay.
Don't do that.
Okay.
Don't come and lecture us about what you think should be
Yeah,
happening,
all right,
and equally
okay,
with that
okay,
auditor.
okay,
We are dealing with the report that was presented to us here.
All right, okay, okay, okay.
Well, Chairperson, as far as I understand, I am not misleading Scopa. I am highlighting on the basis of a comment that was made to the department in as far as its oversight role is concerned. And I'm clarifying that our understanding of this report is that it was commissioned by the board to inform the board on the weaknesses in the system. And as a result, they have implemented a certain number of those in line with the pressure that we've been putting as a department to ensure that all those issues that have been identified are implemented. I think that's the issue I needed to clarify very well. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
No, that's fine. National Treasurer, there was a question.
Eskom did not respond on the breakdown of the 50 billion per annum.
Okay, no, it's fine. They will. National Treasurer, I'll come back to you, Eskom, on the breakdown of the 50 billion procurement. He explained, the chairperson explained what cost plus mines are.
What the question that was asked, I agree that he did explain about cost plus mines, but the question that was asked, Chairperson, 74.5 billion was spent on the cost plus mines in the last 5 years. Exaro got 1,100. I don't want to go through that, but I'm just saying it's a significant, I mean, it's a big amount of money
yeah.
that was given to them. But irrespective of that, we had load shedding in 2008.
No, that's fine. That's
fine. How do you, what is it, balance the value for money when you look at this?
No, that's fine. No, let me give National Treasury to respond, then I'll come back to you. National Treasurer.
Thanks, Chair. The first issue that I need to clarify is the emergency versus unsolicited bid. And the reason why Eskom was using unsolicited bid is because of emergency. They wanted to get coal as soon as possible. And if in the case that we are talking about, you start negotiations in 2013 and you took 2 years to finalize that negotiations, I don't see where the emergency is. The second issue is the issue of advance payment and
Why don't we start with the question that was directed to you first before you go into other matters that you may want to comment
The question relates to the annual financial statement, the audit. And we met with, firstly we wrote a letter to the Auditor General. We were raising issues from this Eskom report, which was done by PwC, to say when you read this report, there are many non-compliance with supply chain management. And for that reason, when the auditors finalized the 2015-16 audit, why are we not saying any red flags? We wrote that to the Auditor General. The Auditor General wrote back to National Treasury and they said, this audit is not done by Auditor General. It's done by Sizwe Ntsalubago Board. But however, I met with the external auditors and I discussed with them. They are willing to meet with you as National Treasury on a date that you will agree with them. And we agreed, they came to us, and the first question we asked them was that there are two key reports that are mentioned here. You have the PwC report, You have another report which is internal done by Dr. Chris Alphen. Then we said, was the PwC report given to you before you finalized the 2015-16 external audit? They indicated to us that that report was given late to them. Then we asked them, because we know this type of reports should serve in the audit committee, and you as the external auditors, you are members of the audit committee, did this report serve in the audit committee? They said, yes, it served, but in that meeting, they were not invited. They said the head of internal audit there is the one who briefed them. Then we continue to ask them to say, even with the advance payment and the like, even if you didn't raise the issue of the advance payment, but the issue of the price that Eskom was prepared to pay 19.69 Rand per gigajoule when they were buying this coal from Optimum Mine for 18.68 Rand, which after they've done a closed bid, the price by the same Optimum Mine comes to 16.05 Rand. Did you look at that? They said, we didn't, but we'll look at it because we are busy auditing. I think in terms of the audit report, those are the issues that we raised with them, and they are looking at them. What we don't know is how the report will look like. But further than that, recently we requested, because we were saying, in terms of the non-compliance, we requested the audit management letters from them to say, because of this non-compliance, we need to see the previous audits, because they may assist us to see whether the non-compliance were there or not there. The other matter that maybe I can raise it with them, we also raised to them, we said, we see that there's a possible conflict of interest because you are auditing, for example, Eskom, and you are the main auditors of Oak Bay, the other side. And you need to look at this issue. They said they'll look at it and then they will give us a report back. But you see, when Eskom commissioned this in August, September, they were already aware that we have started our review from August 2015. Obviously, there was going to be some duplication. They should have said, Treasury, wait, because we will just spend money. But they never even told us. And even that report, we audited the whole 2016 getting reports. That report was never given. Even in 2016, it was not given. Only in 2017 it's given. We have wasted a lot of other resources checking the non-compliance that have already been raised. Obviously, that money, if I was able to calculate, I would say it's fruitless and wasteful expenditure which you must recover from Eskom. The main recommendation in that report, which was in 2015, which was saying the coal contract must be reviewed.
All right.
I wanted to conclude on that.
Yeah, if you're concluding, that's
Yeah.
fine, because otherwise, if I don't know how long you're going to
Correct,
go.
which said the contract must be reviewed so that issues of coal quality should be taken into account, which was raised by Member Shengwa. In 2015, when the second follow-up was done in 2016, that coal contract was not yet reviewed. If you look at the second report of PwC when Eskom responded, they indicated to say a number of things have not been done. Maybe this review will be given to Ligan in March 2017. What I don't know whether that has been referred to them because it's in their report 2016. It will be reviewed in March 2017.
All right. There was a question on the breakdown, the 50 billion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can give you a breakdown by supplier, which is on page 3, which basically says we spend about 7 billion with Anglo American, 5.5 billion with BHP Billiton, about 600 million with Glencore. There's about 5.4 billion that we spend with smaller white-owned companies that make up the 5.4 billion. Then there's about 12 billion that we spend with Exaro. And then there's about 6.7 billion that we spend with Tegeta. And then there's about 8.5 billion that we spend with other black-owned companies. That's around 42, 43 billion rand worth of the 50 billion, Spencer.
Right. I suppose that we can go on until sunset. I don't think we can claim that we're exhaustive of the issues.
Don't forget the question to Mr. Molefe from Member Matsodi. Let's not forget that question.
No. You should have had it. It was very pointed. Were you instructed by anybody to do the prepayments when there was that meeting that took the decision on prepayments?
In fact, Chair, you can go and check the minutes of that meeting. I was not even at that meeting.
All right, comrades, let's do this. I think for our part, the responses would have assisted us to make sense of the report, and we'll be able to do our own report arising out of the engagement. Safe to say that we think that the issues that were raised in the PwC report were indeed quite serious issues of non-compliance in relation to the Tegeta mine, but also in relation to the other 3 mines. And being samples, it might be a pointer to difficulties in quite a number right across the board. But I think that, well, the minister has come with a possible solution so that we don't have doubts hanging around what has happened and what is happening with the SIU investigation. That will sort of give everybody a comprehensive picture of what is happening. Unfortunately, the Auditor General does not have the kind of capacity that we need. We know that entities that are audited by private firms vis-a-vis the audits of the Auditor General are substantively quite different. It will not be unique to Eskom. It is something that we come across in many of the entities that that we engage with. But we want to thank you for... okay, Hlengwa, and then I'll come to you.
My apologies, Chair. I don't mean to interrupt your conclusion. The DG spoke. I was a tad bit confused about the origins of this investigation or audit, call it what you want to call it. But he spoke about an implementation plan, which was a response now to the findings and the outcomes of the PwC report. I was just going to request, Chair, that we get a copy of that so that we can be, afford an opportunity to interrogate the responses or the envisaged plans in terms of how this particular, how the board and Eskom in general actually looked at these things, because I think the DG said an action plan and implementation plan had been devised in response to this particular thing. So as part of the documents we seek, I would request that we get a sight of that.
Kuno?
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, let's not run around the bush or play with words and all. We had the anti-corruption task team not so long ago that came before us as Scopa. They told us the problems, the kind of problems that they have in terms of functioning, and that will include the SIU. Chairperson, if, I do not dispute what the minister has said. It's the right way to do things. But whilst waiting for that, when we know that it's going to take a long time before we get a final report, I would suggest that all the reports that we have asked for, we should be given. We should be finished with those reports. The way you gave that contract to Tegeta and all other contracts that they had, that they said they came to an end, we need to have full details on those reports. I think, Chairperson, what we need is 2 days with Eskom to go through and verify what they have said to us, Chairperson. There are lots of documents that we are waiting for them. Treasury and PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, gave us a report. We need to have a verifying report. The 39 points that the CEO spoke to, that they've dealt with, we want to see a proof about that, how far, and those that they said they're still, you know, the 6 points or the 3 points that are still has to be pursued as far as the PwC report is concerned. We also need to check that, Chairperson. And also, Chairperson, the most important one as well is to get a report from Treasury. How far are they with what the report that they received from PwC, their own report now from Treasury. So I'm saying, as much as we'll be waiting for the SIU report, and I think for us to conclude, we need to have those documents, have a day or 2 days, and deal with this Eskom matter once and for all, Chairperson. Thanks.
Apologize because something has just been brought to my attention, and I think I need to amend what I've said. In this presentation, which was given to us here on page 15, which would be slide 29, it says, was the 2015 PwC report considered by Eskom board? Response, no. However, the Audit and Risk Committee is a subcommittee of the board. Was the 2015 PwC report considered by external auditors of Eskom? No. However, the report was provided to the external auditors on 4 April 2017, and the external auditors are considering during the current external audit. So, Chair, I'm just now not sure of the status of that implementation plan, if the board has not or has never considered this report. So that's why I'm saying I'm leaving it up to you, Chair, to guide us, because it now brings into question, unfortunately, it comes from Eskom. So that's where my confusion comes. But I leave it to you, Chair, to give us a guidance. So good, the board report.
I want us to end. I was actually concluding. Yes, comrade.
No, Chair, I just did not want to disrupt the meeting and repeat the question. These are the questions that I asked as to how did Eskom not consider this report, but on the other side, the audit committee is implementing its considerations and findings. But I'm not saying now they must respond, but in the future, or there must be something, even if it's in writing, it must be checked as if what the DG is saying is correct to say it was the internal arrangement of Eskom, and that PwC should have reported to Eskom, and then Eskom should have actually pronounced as per their findings. So the processing of this particular report is causing the confusion that it has caused, that there is a PwC as if is like an external kind of a report which is internal.
Okay. No, it's fine, comrades. I really would want us to tie this. As I've said, we can go on and on and on and on and on. But I would like us to rest it here for today. We thank you for the responses that you have given us, and Chair, I hope you will be helpful.
All I want to say, Chairperson, to your committee, and to the people of this country. Business implications of implementing the National Treasury directives on Eskom and on electricity. We have lost 513.25 million negotiated savings. They were lost to Kusile because of National Treasury. Majuba coal cost escalated 12%. No, but you must know this.
Yeah, no, comrades, let's do this. No, let's do this. Let's do, Chair, just hang on a minute. I think let's leave it at the PwC report. The other matters, Chair, I think the portfolio committee is there. It deals with current issues. Let's ventilate them there, because unfortunately, if they are facts, they'll catch up with us. We can't run away from them. But if they are not facts, well, equally so, they will not matter. But if they are facts, they will be there, and there will be a reality that we'll have to face. So, but I think let's deal with that in the portfolio committee. Comrades, thanks very much.